Ladies and gentlemen, Mesdames, Messieurs, meine Damen und Herren, Mensa, Dumela Botswana, Sawubona South Africa. Mensa. How are you all doing? All right, folks, welcome to Chris Wyatt Africa once again. Busy day here on the channel, busy day, lots going on, many things keeping us busy here today. Let's talk about some of that. Welcome to everybody in the chat for tuning in to Chris Wyatt Africa. Good to see you here once again. So we're going to talk a little bit about a topic near and dear to my heart today, and I'm going to put that map up in the corner there so you get a little hint as to what it is we're going to be talking about. That's right, ladies and gentlemen, 2021 British and Irish Lions fixtures in South Africa. Big tour coming up in 2021, ladies and gentlemen. Absolutely massive. 8 games being played against the Stormers, the Sharks, the South Africa A side, the South Africa Invitational side, the Bulls, and 3 test matches against the Springboks. That's right, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome aboard. Hank, thank you so much. 5,000 subscribers. Absolutely the case. Did get 5,000 subscribers. Thank you so much for that. That's kind of cool. That is the news from today. There was big news that crossed that threshold of 5,000 subscribers. So thank you all so much. Let me go ahead and get the chat started. Had some weird things going on. By the way, those of you tuned in earlier to the Marabani chat, or not chat, but to the Marabani stream, thank you so much for that. That live stream was brilliant. Really enjoyed it. We had to unfortunately cut it short because we had a members perks stream, and the members perks stream was important because if you become a member of Chris Wyatt Africa, there ought to be something for your membership. We have 73 members of Chris Wyatt Africa, and so we had a stream for those folks. Now, for those who are watching the stream and looking at the chat, and you'll see if you look next to Hank's name and you look next to Yanni's name, you'll see that Hank has a little house with a tree there, and Yanni has a moai. What is a moai? Well, moai is the stone head figures carved on Easter Island in the South Pacific. And that is the icon that a member gets once they enter their second month. There you go. Hendo is telling Erica to stop stalking him. But yeah, so if you have a moai next to your name, you've been a member for 2 months. We have different levels. As you go up each level for length, duration of being a member on the channel, you get a new icon. So the little house is for 1 month, and we just reached the 1 month point in memberships today, June 17th. So anybody who has now got the little moai, you've been a member for over a month. And those, as time goes on, you reach that stage, you'll get the moai, and then it will go on to the next one. The Statue of Liberty is the next level, so kind of cool. Anyway, so let's see. So Hendrik de Klerk was here first and said thank you, or congratulations, 5,000 subscribers. Thank you so much for that, Hendrik. Karen, long time since last chat. Yeah, wow, gosh, like an hour. Gert Jansen van Rensburg says, good evening, Chris. Well, good evening to you. Hank Kloppa, Yanni, good to see you. Ranger Jakes, welcome. Erica, hello again. Erica's busy. She's, but I'm glad she's here. Hendo, Redskins got sexual harassment problems. Ladies and gentlemen, once you give in to the mob, this is what happens. It never ends. Are you in the least bit surprised that the Washington Redskins, now known as the District of Columbia Pansies, I don't know what they're called. They haven't changed their name. But the Washington Redskins now have the Me Too movement out against them, claiming all sorts of things, none of which people were coming forward with before they showed weakness and surrendered and played surrender monkeys to the mob. Despite the fact that the overwhelming majority of people find the name Redskins to be a noble name for the franchise and celebrates the heritage of Native Americans, they changed the name in this politically toxic environment. So they're going to be a target, and watch for more to come out. Absolutely. They'll go after them left and right. Absolutely. Once somebody sees they have traction, they'll go after them. Yep. I see people using the custom emojis from including the little Chris Wyatt one there. I can't get that thing resized. If somebody knows how to make, actually, I think I know how I can fix that now. I found a site. So I will fix that emoji and replace it sometime soon to get the aspect ratio of 1:1. But yeah, so that's a Chris Wyatt one. So there are custom emojis. If you're a member of the channel, you can access those. And you also have a little symbol next to your name when you are a member of the site. And that changes over time. Jason, sorry, no Giselle at the moment. Maybe Giselle will tune in and say hello. It's been a long time, busy at work lately. Need some advice on handguns for self-defense. I'm looking for a Beretta 9. Okay. Not a bad choice. I'm looking at a Sig Sauer right now. What you have to do, Jason, is get a handgun that you're comfortable holding, one that you're comfortable wearing in a holster, so that you also have to get something that has stopping power. You don't want to get something that, you don't fire a small handgun that's going to not stop your attacker and not defend yourself. So you want something with stopping power. That's probably a good choice. We use 9mm Berettas in the military. I've carried 9mm Beretta for over 2 decades in uniform as my sidearm. It's effective, but I really like this Sig Sauer. It's pretty impressive, so I'm thinking about getting it. Anyway, no, this is not the gun channel. Just a question was asked, so I'm talking about it. Rusty spoon for weapon monkey. Keep pushing wood. It's got a rusty spoon. Okay, well, there you go, folks. Yeah. So in the upper left-hand corner of my screen today, you will see South Africa fixtures for 2021. Let me run through those very quickly. So on the 3rd of July, 2021, the plan now is for the British and Irish Lions to make a tour. For those not familiar with it, what this is a team of the best players, supposedly the best players, from the United Kingdom and the Republic of Ireland who come down. So you get Wales, Scotland, Ireland, Northern Ireland, and England who participate. You don't find many players from Northern Ireland, but you do find them from the rest of those 3. And I did mention Wales. So they come and they're part of a tour. And this tour is they were in New Zealand, Australia just a year or 2 ago. They'll be in South Africa in 2021. It's always a big deal when the British and Irish Lions come to South Africa for their tour. So they'll play the Stormers on the 3rd of July in Cape Town. And they won't be at Newlands because Newlands will be demolished by that time, sadly. On the 7th of July, they play a South Africa invitational side at Nelson Mandela Bay in Port Elizabeth. And then on the 10th of July, they'll play at Kings Park in Durban. There you go. For Sharks fans, they'll be playing against the Sharks on the 10th of July. On the 14th of July, they'll play a South Africa A side. Yeah, it's every 4 years, Hank. That's correct. So South Africa A side, and they'll be playing at Nelspruit on that one. And then on the 17th of July, they will play at Loftus Versfeld in Pretoria against the Bulls. And then they play 3 matches against South Africa, against the Springboks. On the 24th in Johannesburg at Ellis Park, or as they like to call it now, FNB Stadium. Ellis Park, ladies and gentlemen. That's on the 24th of July. On the 31st of July, they play in Cape Town. And then on the 7th of August, at Ellis Park. Wait a second. Did I get it wrong? Is FNB Stadium? That's the wrong one. Oh, I'm mixing stadiums. Yeah. Maybe it's 2 different stadiums here. They are playing FNB and at Ellis Park. Sorry, I thought they renamed one of them. They're always changing names of stadiums. Anyway, rugby is back. Not yet, the Brew, but that's for 2021. Yeah. 6 hours expensive. Yeah, that's true. That's a consideration, Jason. Also, if you have concerns about people breaking in or stealing it, you're not going to want to arm them with a really good sidearm. So you have to consider that too. That's an important consideration. Yeah, so keep that in mind if it's a chance that it could be lost that way. Going to be so good to watch rugby again. Well, Hendrik, I've been watching rugby again, the New Zealand version of Super Rugby. By the way, for those who don't know about it, I've been pointing out the rumors that the New Zealand Rugby Union is planning on exiting the SANZAR agreement and no longer being part of Super Rugby. And then SANZAR would only exist for the purposes of the Tri-Nations, the Rugby Championship, which is called now. It's not the Tri-Nations anymore, but that's the only reason SANZAR would have any purpose. So Super Rugby looks like it's going the way of the dodo. It's going to be extinct. Yeah. So they are going to try to have their own little Super Rugby league with Australia and Japan, apparently. And then they're leaving South Africa and Argentina out of the mix. So I think Super Rugby has been unfortunately mismanaged for about a decade now. When it was Super 12 and Super 14 rugby, it was awesome. Lots of talent. Lots of great fixtures. And then they monkeyed around with the format. They brought in teams from Japan. They didn't even play in Japan half the season. Part of the season they played in Japan. Part of the season they played in Singapore, I think it was. And then they bring in Argentina. And they drop sides, they add sides. Then they make it so that you only play in your region so that you're not traveling as often, which really diminished the competition level. Yeah, so I've had real issues with Super Rugby, even though I've really enjoyed it. But we'll see what happens from here on. General Inflatable says, let's hope COVID is over by then. Well, newsflash, ladies and gentlemen, COVID will not be over by then. COVID is here to stay. Hopefully the political hysteria will be over by then and people will learn how to cope with this, and those who are vulnerable will protect themselves, and governments will continue to seek some sort of vaccine or palliative treatment for it so that it is not as severe. But it won't be over. This virus is not going anywhere. So just hang in there. Don't hang in there. No, don't just use a weapon. Get the right fit. Yeah. Exactly, Brew. Get the right one. You got to have the right one. What about Japan? What's going on with Japan there? Your question, Erica. Let's see. So by the way, folks, thank you again once for tuning into the Marabani stream. I was not expecting to see a whole lot of folks turn up. I didn't know the interest in it. I know that he's popular with some folks. People really like the videos on his channel. And he's been a call-in guest on my program before when I've had call-in sessions, but never had him as a guest. So Marabani will be back on the channel. I like the flow of it. I think a lot of people enjoy the flow of he and I talking about different things, comparing. Actually, he was talking about the U.S. I was talking about the U.S. We were talking about Europe and also South Africa. So it was interesting. But we had over 1,184 people tune in during that stream. It was a really good stream. Thank you so much for that. And I think the peak of concurrent viewers, which hasn't shown up on my stats yet, but as I recall, I saw 175 people, and we actually had about 150 audiences stay the entire time. It was a shame to kind of end the stream, but we needed to because we had a member perks stream that was coming up right after that. So we did the member perks, small audience, but that was expected because it was for members of the channel only. So thank you all who tuned in for that, and if you're members, really appreciate it. Let me catch up on the chat and say hello to everybody now. So let me go back to the beginning. Hendrik, I said hello. Karen, Jansa van Hunsberg, Yanni, Ranger, already got all that. Okay, Hendo, Vutsarko, good to see you, Vutsarko. Monkey Pushing Wood, hello. Erica, Kyle, Green, good to see you again. The Brew is here. Thanks for calling in earlier, Brew and Erica. Really appreciate it, along with Lynn. That was great. Benjamin de Klerk, welcome. Good to see you there. And Gentleman Inflatables, hi once again. Jason, I already answered that. Bosch Zebra, hey, good to see you this evening. Thank you for putting the rugby ball and the William Webb Ellis Trophy up there, which resides in South Africa. Water wars coming with all these dams being built. Yeah, well, if you're talking about the dam project in Ethiopia, that's been a serious point of political contention between Egypt and Ethiopia for several years. They're now filling and charging the reservoir behind the dam, and that's not going to make Egypt happy. Hopefully they're doing it in a smart way. Erica used a little custom emoji of Chris, which looks really tiny on there. I've got to fix that. Monkey Pushing Wood got that rusty spoon for a weapon. Yeah, I love it. Corlia, good to see you there. Corlia van der Merwe. And who else? I think that's everybody that's in the chat. There's Lynn. Hey, Lynn. Good to see you again. That little cherry blossom's really cool, isn't it, Lynn? I like that. I like that custom emoji. Tunes, good evening to you. Brett, welcome back, Brett. I have mixed feelings about Paul Kagame. He's been in power forever, but I don't worry. Yeah, well, I agree with you, Brett. The problem, though, of course, with Kagame is that, like many people with big man syndrome, he has failed to accomplish the most basic of leadership tasks. If you're a leader, you develop your subordinates. You are developing people who will be there to replace you when it's time, who are capable and experienced to replace you. But we see all across Africa instances of the big man who fears being replaced because their interest is power, not on the welfare of the nation. It might be on the welfare of the nation, but even if it's on the welfare of the nation, if you don't develop subordinates who can take over for you, then you fail. Wherever I worked in uniform, my goal was always to make it so that to the lowest level, my subordinates would be capable of performing their job and advancing to the next level. And that's what it's all about. If you do that effectively, then companies survive. If you do that effectively, governance is good and improves. If you do that effectively, people's lives improve. But if you have a serious ego problem and you have no confidence and you don't take the time to develop subordinates, juniors, then you're going to have problems. And this is the problem in Rwanda, which Brett is alluding to. If Paul Kagame goes, what comes next in Rwanda? When Yoweri Museveni goes, what comes next in Uganda? And it's a good question. And this is a real problem with piss poor leadership. And that's one of the biggest failings of Kagame, from my view, is he's not developed subordinates. Yep. Anel Hose, is it Hose or Hosa? I'm a first timer. Well, welcome, Anel. So happy to have you here. Whatever brought you over. Glad to see you. Happy to have you on here. I don't know if you watched one of my videos or somebody recommended you come here or you just came for giggles and grins, but thank you for coming. Since there's a few new folks in here, I'll do a little introduction of myself here in just a minute, but let me go through the rest. Jaco Mayberg is here. Welcome, Jaco. Good to see you. Just subscribe to the channel and following post. Okay, cool. Well, thank you for subscribing to the channel. Central Johannesburg is a cesspool. Rajal says, do you follow cricket at all? Actually, let me tell you the story about cricket. Hang on, I'll tell you the cricket story, but let me introduce myself to the new folks in the stream who are watching the channel. So if you're curious who I am, you can find out about me on the About tab on my channel. It'll say a little bit about me, but just for a little more information, I'm Chris Wyatt. I'm a retired U.S. Army colonel, retired from active duty, but not retired from life, ladies and gentlemen. While I may look like Pete Retief or John Brown, the abolitionist, with this lockdown beard and mane, this isn't normally how I look. In fact, This is a long time ago, but this is more of the look that you would see on me most times. Let's see if I can find it very quickly here. Here you go. There you go. I got to turn off that tour. There you go. Yeah, that's me from when I was much younger in the 1980s, 1987 in the U.S. Army. So normally that's the extent of the length of my hair, and that's what I have on my face, usually no beard. But because I've retired recently from U.S. Army active duty, I now have that going on. So there you go. Anyway, so that's, this thing is not coming up. There we go. Anyway, so that was me a long time ago. Yeah, so I'm retired U.S. Army colonel. I was an intelligence officer, but before that I was enlisted. I was a private, then a sergeant, and returned. I went to university, went in the Army, then returned to university and became commissioned as a second lieutenant. Served 30 years as an officer, 36 years total, 34 of those on active duty, and 23 of those overseas. My tours overseas include 3 tours in Germany, in Bad Kreuznach, in Gelnhausen in Hanau, and finally in Stuttgart, as well as a tour in Italy, where I served in Vicenza, and then I served in Africa in Tunisia, Liberia, Botswana, Malawi, Niger, Mauritania, Uganda, and Ethiopia, where I worked at the African Union. Those are tours, not visits, and not 1 week or 2 weeks, but actual a year or longer in those places, by and large. And then I've also served on short short assignments across Africa in over 30 countries around the continent. I've worked in HIV programs, Ebola, tuberculosis, malaria, development, building schools, clinics, hospitals, things like that. Roads, wells, done peacekeeping, counterterrorism, served in combat in the Gulf Wars, and done all sorts of things. So I was an intelligence officer, but then later, by affectation, became a foreign area officer for sub-Saharan Africa. And that's the reason why I spent so much time in Africa. I've worked at the National Security Agency, at the Defense Intelligence Agency, at the Pentagon. I've also worked at U.S. Africa Command in Germany, and I've also taught university for undergraduates at Iowa State, and then taught postgraduate. My last assignment as the Director of African Studies for the U.S. Army War College. And Carlos Lopez just subscribed. Well, thank you, Carlos, so much for subscribing to the channel. Really appreciate that. We love to see that. That's the zombie climbing the Mahalisberg. In case you're curious what that background is, that is the northern edge of the Mahalisberg Range in South Africa, just west of Rustenburg. That's right. That's on the highway traveling from Zwartruggens towards Rustenburg and then on to Pretoria. So that's going from west to east. That's out the driver's side window. Of course, in South Africa, folks drive on the wrong side of the road. That would be the right side, the wrong side. The correct side is the left side of the road. But anyway, so that made it possible for me to snap that with my mobile as I was traveling a couple years ago. Anyway, yeah, the Mahalisberg. Yep. Yeah, so that's a little bit about me. I'm a published author. I'm a journalist. I do stories on rugby. I've written during the Rugby World Cup in Japan 2019. I spent a month there for travel and tourism, but I was published on DJ Coyle's rugby site, DJ Delta Juliet Coyle, C-O-I-L, rugby. He's an amazing rugby writer, has lots of breaking news, and I did a dozen stories on the Rugby World Cup, mostly human interest, experience of being in Japan and rugby in Japan and the fans there, that sort of thing. Not so much covering the games. I did 1 or 2 stories about games, but most of it was about the human interest stuff. And I also interview folks from the rugby world on my channel. On this channel, you'll find I have prepared videos, which I do on topics of interest. And for instance, right now, one of the top videos is performing on the channel. And thank you all so much for those who've tuned in for it. This was the video. It was called Hatful with Ramaphosa, the NCC, and the ANC. And that video has just caught fire. So thank you all so much for that. It really, really has caught fire. That's the title of the video, and this is the link to get to it if you want to check it out sometime. Go ahead and do that. So here you go. That's the link to that video. And then my most recent video was one I posted yesterday. This is about Eskom and the story that German engineers have come to South Africa to save Eskom from load shedding. There you go. All right. So, oops, I put the wrong link with the first one. Sorry. The first one was the wrong link. So there you go. So if you want to check those out sometime, just click on them and go to the bookmark. I got them backwards there. Anyway, that's 2 of my videos. So I do prepared videos on topics of geostrategic interest. I also have a regularly scheduled Saturday live stream, which is normally 11 o'clock Eastern Standard Time in the U.S. or 5 p.m. in Botswana and South Africa. I do that every Saturday. I've done that for about 3 months now. A variety of guests, including small-scale commercial farmers in Ghana, security experts for the Lake Chad Basin, bankers talking about debt in Africa, as well as a host of other folks trading with Africa. And so lots of other things. I've even had, I promote Afrikaans culture on this channel and Afrikaans music in particular. Giselle, who's a Namibian singer, is one of my favorites. Promote her. I've had her on the channel a few times. We did the debut for her new album, Vir ons Mense, on the 8th of May. You can find it under past live streams. You'll find that under that playlist, and you can watch that if you like. It's an hour and 3 minutes. You can listen to her music free of charge, and if you like her music, you can go check it out. She's available on digital platforms. So we did that. Then I did an interview with her and with her manager, Johan Eisel. And then we just did another stream with Giselle last week. But unfortunately, you can't watch that because the software has blocked my video because they claim I don't have the license for the videos. I do, and I'm disputing it. So I apologize for you not being able to see that. But the May 8th concert is freely available, no charge, 1 hour and 3 minutes of fantastic music in Afrikaans. Great songs like Sight West, which is about Namibia, and beautiful lyrics, beautiful melody, and amazing cinematography for the video. So check that one out. And then her more recent song, Suid-Afrika and Vir ons Mense, those songs are on the album. It's really good, so check it out. So I also do that as well as try to promote cultural understanding of others. I speak 6 languages to varying degrees of proficiency, 3 fluently, and the other 3 not so fluently, but well enough that I get by. So that's English, German, French, Afrikaans, Setswana, and Swahili. Yeah, so anyway, so I've lived all over the world and done some pretty cool things. It's been an interesting life thus far. I've enjoyed the ride for the most part. There have been some down moments, but that's just the nature of life, ladies and gentlemen. But anyway, so for those new to the channel, that's kind of it. Now, I was going to answer that question. I forgot what the question was. I got to go back and find it again. What was that question? My goodness, I'm so sorry about that. Oh, cricket. Yeah, cricket. That was the question. Okay, so the cricket story. Thank you. So here, thanking myself, I found that. So here's the cricket story, ladies and gentlemen. So I didn't get cricket. I didn't grow up with cricket. I knew what it was. It kind of looked like these guys looking kind of posh in India or somewhere in England, running back and forth between these poles, and some dudes trying to hit the poles. Didn't make any sense. And then I was in Malawi in 2006, I think it was, so about 14 years ago, and I was deathly ill. It turns out I probably had gallstones. I didn't know at the time, but I was in agony. And it was a Sunday or Saturday. It was a Saturday, I think it was. And I was in agony. And I was in my room, and it was brutally hot in Malawi. And so I couldn't walk. I was just doubled over in pain. I had a nice big king bed, and air conditioning was working great. So I turned the TV on, and of course, only one channel was working on DSTV in the hotel, and that was Super Sport. And the only thing on was cricket. So I lay there in pain most of the day for about 9 or 10 hours while, cricket goes on forever. And this cricket tournament went on, and I watched it while I was in agony as I tried to get through the day. Pain came and went, but the cricket stayed. And I figured out the rules and started to understand the game just through osmosis of watching the game and a little bit of the commentary. And so I was like, okay, I kind of get cricket now. And that's how I learned cricket. Never played it, though. And I'd never gone to a match until last year. I was in the UK for a speaking engagement when I spoke at a conference on repatriating ICE and Daesh, their fighters, their spouses, and their children. And of course, happenstance, on the road to serendipity, sometimes things just happen. So the Cricket World Cup was underway. The 2019 ICC Cricket World Cup in England, Wales was underway. And so I went to it in Edgbaston in Manchester, where I watched a home game for Pakistan. Yeah, that's right, in Manchester, England, a home game. 85 to 90% of the crowd was Pakistani. They were playing New Zealand, so I watched them play New Zealand, and it was quite interesting. I spent several hours there, enjoyed it. And yes, I know there's a distinction between the single-day games and tournaments and the multi-day ones, but this was the single day. So quite interesting. So yeah, that's how first time I ever went to a cricket game was the Cricket World Cup. How cool is that? Yeah. Now, by comparison, I'm a massive rugby fan. Been a rugby fan since the early 1980s, and only able to go to rugby matches, professional ones, in the last 15 years or so, mostly because I was in Africa and I could go to things. I have been to every Rugby World Cup since 2011. So 2011, I was in New Zealand. In 2014, I was in Paris for the Women's Rugby World Cup. 2015, England for the Men's World Cup. And then 2017 in Ireland for the Women's World Cup. 2018 in San Francisco for the Sevens World Cup. 2019 in Japan for the Rugby World Cup. The next World Cups are in New Zealand for the women, and then in France for the men. The New Zealand one, I'm interested. The Rugby World Cup in France, I've been to France many times, and I'm thinking real hard about whether there's an appeal for me to go to France to watch the next World Cup. Probably I might just go just to keep my streak alive of, 6 World Cups in 8 years. Quite a bit. So there you go. So there's the question on rugby, or on cricket. I hope that answered your question. Let me catch up then. Nigel says, I'm a big man. I get missed in all the salutations. Nigel, hello. You're not being missed. Did I miss you? I say hello to you a lot. My apologies if I haven't said it recently. Brett says, Edgar Lungu from Zambia is, yes, I'm making a video on that. In fact, I just set my notes over to the side. I would have recorded, but I had to do some shopping today. I've been quite busy. But I will be making a video. That news broke earlier in this week about him supplying Sankara, who was involved in terrorizing folks in Rwanda. So I'll be talking about... Jason says, you ever been to Central Joburg? Yes, like close town. Well, Jason, I've been through Hillbrow many times, and I've been right downtown because I went to the SAB brewery tour several times. And so, yes, I've been there. I've been to Central Joburg, and I have been, yeah, exactly. I've been there. So, yeah, I have been. Not a place I'd recommend folks go. So sorry about that, Nigel, if you felt left out. Nigel is a big contributor to the chat on the channel, so that was not intentional, Nigel. No slight intended. Eugene Rudman. Is it Rudman or Rudman? I would pronounce it Eugene Rudman, but that's, Anel Hoz says, thank you for the very informative sessions. Well, you're most welcome. It's my pleasure. I hope you're enjoying it. Thank you all for tuning in and being part of the stream. It makes it Gandalf the Wyatt, monkey pushing wood. The Black Lives Matter horse manure sycophant stuff going on with South Africa cricket, but South Africa cricket is it's broken anyway. You've had corrupt cricket players in the past. You had an abysmal showing in the 2019 World Cup. It was just Neo Rain says thank you for your service. Well, you're most welcome, Neo. It's my pleasure. Yes, Paul Chris Kruger. I like that. Please hit the like button, folks. That's not going to kill you anything. It doesn't cost anything to hit the like button. Brett says Liberia is an example that relocate African Americans to Africa is racist and doesn't work. Liberia has been plagued with civil war and poverty and disease for many years. Brett, are you being intentionally cheeky? I'm not so sure where to go with that. And also the conjugation of the verb, I'm not sure if you're saying is or was, because you're typing, but yes, Liberia was colonized. That's my position on that. That's what I tell people all the time as an academic, as a historian, as a political scientist. It was, because when I always give a trick question when I was teaching at the Army War College, and I would say to my students, what countries in Africa were never colonized? And always you get Liberia and Ethiopia. And to which I tell my students, wrong. And then I get these wide-eyed stares. No, Liberia wasn't colonized. Ethiopia was never colonized. In fact, they both were colonized. Ethiopia was colonized from 1936 to 1941 by the Italians. True, the Italians primarily only had governance and control over Addis Ababa and the environs around it, not the entire country, whereas most of the countryside was controlled by Ethiopian rebels. But they nonetheless colonized it and imposed an alien system of governance over Ethiopia. That is colonization. That's how it starts. It's not simply extracting raw materials or selling people or diamonds or ivory or cocoa or whatever it is. It is imposing an alien system of governance, which is what the fascist Italian government did. It imposed an alien system of governance over Addis and the areas around it and attempted to do it over the entire country. British Commonwealth troops in 1941 liberated Ethiopia and chased the Italians out. So 5 years, but colonized nonetheless. The Ethiopians were very proud, get very angry when I say this. But if you're objective and you're honest, that's the truth. The other country, Liberia, was in fact colonized by former slaves and free blacks from the United States who returned to Monrovia, found in Monrovia, and then spread out from there. That group was augmented by the British Navy interdicting the slave trade in West Africa and capturing slave trading ships and dropping off the slaves because they couldn't take them back where they came from. They didn't necessarily know, although a lot of them came from the mouth of the Congo, Cameroon, places like that. So they dropped them off in Freetown in Sierra Leone, and the other place to drop them off was in Monrovia. And so you have sections of those towns that have lots of other Africans from other parts and their origin. So you might do a DNA test for someone in Monrovia or Freetown and find out that they have origins in the Congo Basin or Angola, because that's where their ancestors came from. And so, in fact, if you go to Monrovia, there's a part of Monrovia called Congo Town, because that's where these people landed. Now, many of those people who were bound for slavery and were freed mixed and mingled into the Americo-Liberian community. And they imposed an alien system of governance on the indigenous population of Liberia, naming the country for freedom, the capital after James Monroe, and counties after different places, like Maryland County, named after the state of Maryland. Why? Because a large number of the people who went to found Liberia were from Maryland, D.C., and Northern Virginia, especially Maryland. If you go to the Hall of Records, which is the archives in Maryland, you will find letters from Americans who went to Liberia and colonized it. They sent back of the hideous situation they were living in. These people, their ancestors, in many cases, had been in North America at this point for close to 200 years. They had mixed with Europeans. Valerie Ells has just subscribed. Thank you, Valerie, for subscribing. Appreciate that. Thank you for becoming a subscriber to Chris White Africa and getting that zombie running across the Mahalisburg. So they had lost much of their natural immunity to malaria as a consequence of being away from the continent for so long and or mixing with Europeans. And so those who went back were dying in droves from malaria and tropical diseases, which they had no protection against. And so it's really heartbreaking and sad and wrenching to read some of these letters. Nonetheless, that community, which was never more than 5% of the population of Liberia, controlled that country in a colonial fashion from the 1830s, 20s, 30s, all the way up until 1980, when Samuel Doe overthrew the Tolbert government and executed, all kinds of people. And things have changed since then. So I'm not sure where Brett was going, but there's a little bit of a history lesson there. Hopefully some interest in that. The brew is either having fun, he's had too much to drink, or he's commenting on my pronunciation of the Hollisburg. Okay. Brett says, what were some of your challenges working in Liberia? Oh my goodness, Brett. The challenges were endless in Liberia, but the reward was amazing. How cool is it to be part of history and change the narrative on a place that was so broken? So I was responsible for the security sector reform for National Defense Program, rebuilding the Armed Forces Liberia. When I arrived, the program was two and a half years old. There was no money, and it was on the verge of collapse. We were supposed to have Sniper Gear has just subscribed. That's a cool username. Thank you for getting the zombies running from the sniper. That's what he's doing. So thank you for subscribing, Sniper Gear. When I got there, the program was supposed to have been completed, and we were supposed, as U.S. government, to have delivered 2,000 vetted, trained, and qualified soldiers for a new Armed Force of Liberia. The old one of 14,700 had been demobilized, and they started from scratch. When I arrived, there were 102 soldiers. That was it. 102 or 105. It was 1 or 2, I think it was. And that was it. No more soldiers. 2.5 years in the program. When I left, about 15 months later, we had 2,137 recruited, vetted, trained, qualified soldiers. Almost all of them had gone through their individual specialty training, either as infantrymen, communication specialists, intelligence, medics, drivers, whatever it was. And we completed 80% of the construction for the barracks and the training facilities, and we had about 50% of the equipment. I couldn't do more because there wasn't enough money to do everything, so I had to balance. It's a very delicate balancing act between myself and the contractors who work for me. And so there you go. But the challenges were immense. There was no electricity in Liberia when I was there. The only electricity that was reliable was at the U.S. Embassy, where we had two 60 kW generators. I think it was 60 kW that ran 24 hours a day. They would cycle them through just like in the military. You run one, shut it down. The other runs for 12 hours. You shut it down. And that's how we got electricity in Monrovia throughout my tour there. The roads were abysmal until the Chinese came in with World Bank funding and repaired the roads, and then they were good for like 6 weeks till they fell apart again. And I'm not embellishing, like 6 weeks, we already had potholes again. But the roads were abysmal. It was difficult to do things there. It was dangerous. It was never dangerous for me in uniform because people respected the U.S. military. And so everywhere I go there, I was like, U.S. Marine, U.S. Marine. And I'd have to point to my shirt and say, no, U.S. Army, U.S. Army. But I was nearly attacked a couple of times at night, out early evening jogging in my shorts. Someone tried to drop a cinder block on my head from a building, presumably to rob me. Or who knows, rob, rape, who knows what's going on. But yeah, crime was a real serious issue there. And what I found disturbing about Liberia is that people stole from even the poorest of people. There were situations in which people lived in a little house. They have no windows, of course, because it's brutally hot and humid. And they would take poles and put a little hook on the end of it, and they would run the pole through the people's window, through the bars, because they have bars for security, and they would steal their laundry that was hanging up in the apartment during the night. So people wake up and all their clothes are gone. You steal from the poor. Yeah, and people are always like, well, it's about poverty. It's not about poverty because the person that stole that stuff isn't poor. The person that steals your mobile phone, that steals your radio, that breaks in your car or steals your car is not poor. They have lots of things because they've stolen it from others. It's not about poverty. Anyway, so there were a lot of challenges. Malaria was a challenge. Fortunately, never got malaria when I was in Liberia. I took my prophylaxis. I followed my guidelines. I was smart about what I did and where I went, and I was fortunate I never got it. But malaria would always take out 15 to 25% of our workforce in the embassy. Liberians would be out sick because of malaria any day of the year. It was quite devastating to see how pervasive it was there. Yeah, it was quite a challenge, but quite a rewarding experience in Liberia. I went there thinking the program was mostly over, and I inherited and got to do some really, really super cool things in Liberia. And I was kind of a big man on campus. Everybody was calling me all the time. Everybody wanted to call Wyatt. Commies must check with immediate effect. Well, I like that. What does Hatfol mean? Sentinel projects. Well, Hatfol is an Afrikaans word, which means you've had it up to here. In German, we'd say, ich habe die Nase voll gehabt. In other words, my nose is full. Or I've had it up to my shoulders with this. That's what people say in English. That's what Hatfol means. And Anel Hose, who just became a subscriber, has also become a member. Well, thank you, Anel. Thank you so much for joining and becoming a member. That makes you the 74th member of Chris White Africa. Thank you so much for that support. Really glad to have you on. So thank you, Anel. I really appreciate that, even if I did pronounce your surname wrong. And you have to forgive me if you're an Afrikaans speaker and I mispronounce your surname. You guys don't pronounce words properly. Just kidding. My second language was German, and German is phonetic. You see a letter, there's a way to pronounce it. You pronounce it the same way all the time, with a few exceptions, like, D's at the end of words were pronounced as T. But anyway, with Afrikaans, the pronunciation is a bit difficult for me. So oftentimes when I'm engaged with people speaking to me in Afrikaans, those who are regular viewers of the channel know that the phrase that comes out is, "Ik praat nie Afrikaans nie." Because, and then they go, yes, you can. You just spoke it. No, you guys are too fast, especially those serious farmers, the Boers out there in the Northwest or in Mpumalanga, guys with those deep accents, those Bok van Blerk or Joe Black, deep voices. It's difficult for me to keep up with them. Gert Janse van Rensburg says, don't even waste my time with a bunch of communist pansies. Good for you. So that's what Hatfol means. It means you've had it up to here. You're full. You've had enough of this. And so it's actually interesting word. Let me catch up with this. So Sentinel project's fed up. Is there any chance that the state of Liberia ever improving? Well, Brett, yeah, I think there is a chance. But the problem is that it's just people are just too inclined to be corrupt. It's really frustrating. We've seen corruption, I don't want to say creep backing because it never went away. But when I was in Liberia, the government ministries in Liberia could not do... Dum-dum, give me your gum-gum statue from Easter Island, Corley. Corley, when you get to 2 months, you'll get your Easter Island moai. That's what you'll get. The problem is that even when I was there, so you couldn't dispense money if you worked for a government ministry, say the Ministry of Justice, or the police, or for the Ministry of Defense, over like $50 in the government Liberia, unless a U.S. official was there doing it. Now, that was an agreement that was reached with the UN and with the government of Liberia, the transitional government, that in order to prevent corruption, you'd have to have an interlocutor from the U.S. there who oversaw it. And as long as we were overseeing that, it was difficult for people to steal money. Now, there are still creative ways to steal money and get money. You can take, you can take patronage payments from people on the side, and that did happen. But actually stealing from state coffers was pretty much contained until the U.S. pulled back its advisors. We can't do it forever. Liberians have to have a better sense of responsibility. Some do, some don't. I will say that the Armed Forces of Liberia, now I'm not a neutral observer because I trained them, and it's a legacy that I helped create, built that army. But I would say in my experience, most of those people in uniform, especially the officers, are very professional and are not involved in this sort of thing. But I can't say the same thing about other parts of the government of Liberia. Just can't. Wish I could, but I can't. And we've seen a lot of corruption charges of late, including charges against the former defense minister, whom I knew, Brownie Samakai. Whether they're legitimate or trumped up, I have no idea. What I can say is that I never saw the man engaged in anything corrupt. But then if he was engaged in anything corrupt, he probably would have kept it from me, because I was pretty clear about my view on corruption when I was in Liberia. And I was also pretty clear about my view on transparency. I went out of my way to work with the media, and there's hundreds of news stories. Every time we did a ceremony, we did a graduation, we did an induction, we were doing something different, I would be in the press or get the military covered in the press so the public would know what's going on. Because before I arrived, my predecessor wasn't engaged with the press very much. He didn't find it useful. And one of the consequences consequences of that was that people thought that there was this, secret stuff going on. We were building a super military that was going to threaten Sierra Leone and Guinea and Ivory Coast. And one of my missions was to make sure that people knew what we were doing. There are no secrets here. In fact, the Chinese senior colonel, who was the attaché at the Chinese embassy, thought he was pretty clever. He called me up, Colonel Wyatt, can I... Wait, is that racist? No. Colonel Wyatt, can I... Actually, now I sound like I'm from Tijuana, not from China. But he said, yeah, can I get some information about your graduation? I'm like, absolutely, Senior Colonel. In fact, if you'd like, I'll have someone deliver it in the next hour or so. And I'd have a letter which I'd write from the American Embassy, and I'd send it over, and I'd say, this is the graduation, this is the number of students, these are the counties they're from, their ethnic background, and this is how many are graduating on this date, and yada, yada. All this information, which I'm sure he sat down and typed into a cable, which he sent back to Beijing to show how smart he was spying on the Americans. But we wanted Beijing to know what we were doing. We wanted the world to know what we were doing. So if it wasn't something sensitive, we shared it. And so I was always on the press, always on the radio. Went on the United Nations radio program in the morning to be interviewed about U.S. Africa Command being created, about the program itself. And then I also did things like when we had truck drivers. Most of the students for the truck driver course were actually women. Women don't drive heavy-duty trucks in most of the world, let alone in Africa. So we trained these soldiers to become truck drivers, but the reason they were truck drivers is not because that's what they wanted to do, but because of their educational level, that's the aptitude they qualified for. So 3/4 of the truck drivers in the first class were women because they didn't get proper education, but they were literate, so they were able to get in the program. And so because we had so many women, it was quite a novelty for librarians. In fact, there's a place in Monrovia called Stoplight. And the reason it's called Stoplight, now this is really imaginative, right? Very creative. There's a traffic signal there, a robot for those of you from South Africa. And so that robot is there, and they call that Stoplight. There's a lot of informal shops and formal shops around it where people set up markets and such. And they were out doing training, driving around during the course, in convoy, because you have convoy procedures and safety things and inspections and briefings and such. So you have to do all this. You don't just get in a truck and drive. You don't just get the keys and go in the car. There's much more complicated military if you do it properly. So we taught them properly. So they were stopped at Stoplight, not because the stoplight was working, but because there were so many people walking the streets, you can't just run over them. And somebody said, hey, that's a woman. There's a woman in that truck. And people started looking around, and they looked up. Now, I know this because the soldiers told me secondhand. They looked up and yeah, it's a female. And so people started gathering around the trucks, and all the trucks had female drivers and assistant drivers in it. And they were fascinated. So they wound up spending an hour there talking to people, telling them how they were in the Armed Forces Liberia because they're in uniform. And as a consequence of that, I figured, let's get this word out even better, because the word started spreading that we were training females to be truck drivers, which is very novel in Africa, especially in West Africa. And so we went on United Nations Radio, the coffee talk program in the morning, drive time program, which is the most listened to radio station in all of Liberia at the time. And I brought 3 of the female soldiers on. Of course, we cherry picked. We got the ones who had the gift of gab, willing to talk, and were excited about being in the military. One was married, one was single, one was engaged, that sort of thing. And so we brought them to the radio station. The radio host was talking to me. And I'm like, okay, that's great. Appreciate you introducing me. Thanks for giving me a chance to plug the program. But really, you need to be talking to these soldiers. They're the ones out there. And so we did stuff like that. I have a lot of hope for Liberia, but I'm very concerned about its current president, who is clueless, and also about corruption in the government. It's just, the problem with what I said about Liberia, when I was in Liberia has fertile soil. You could grow almost anything in that soil that would grow in that kind of climate. You just got to plant it and tend to it. They also have huge iron deposits. There are some alluvial diamonds in Liberia. There's other things. There are resources there. There's also great potential for tourism. In the 1960s and 70s, Liberia was a massive tourist destination for people in the diplomatic community all over West Africa. They would fly to Liberia, land there, and go out for surfing at Roberts Port, and they would go into Monrovia because they had great nightclubs and great restaurants and food. But unfortunately, the civil conflict, the 13-year war, destroyed all of that and just turned the place into a mess. It can recover and it can come back. Roberts Port would be huge for people who are into the sea and for surfing. Apparently, surfers say the surf there is quite good. It's not like Australia or Hawaii, but it's quite good. So yeah, it's pretty popular for that, but it needs to come back. We'll see what happens with Liberia, but I do have concerns. But anyway, yeah. So. Okay, tired beyond belief. Thank you, Brew. That's good. Not constipated. No, it's not constipated. Eugene Rudman says, I like Germans. Jawohl. Okay. Oops. Whoa, my chat just jumped way ahead, folks. Let me catch up on the chat because I've been telling stories. So I did thank Anel for becoming a member. Thank you so much for that. Really appreciate that. The Liberia described sounds like South Africa in 10 years. Well, I hope not, Neo. That's very disturbing. I don't know if it'll be like that. I missed a few things. The policy of war on terror the U.S. has waged internationally, like in Libya, Iraq. What's your thoughts as a military man with inside experience, personal thoughts? Well, the war on terror was necessary. It wasn't necessary to call it a war on terror, though. It could have been called something else, and it could have been parsed in a different fashion. But these ghouls have declared war on Western civilization. And they've declared war on Middle Eastern civilization. They've declared war on anybody that doesn't believe in their worldview, and they're willing to use destruction. And my government didn't take that seriously, which I find quite ironic, because in the 1970s and 80s, as we dealt with terrorism in Europe, from the Red Army faction, November 17th, the Red Brigades, the Irish Republican Army, we took it very seriously. In fact, I was nearly killed by the Red Army faction in Germany in 1985. They planted a bomb about 20 meters from my car. I left the location. It wasn't intended for me. It was just a bomb to get anybody, but I happened to be there by happenstance. And as I was driving back home, I heard on the radio, on the German radio, there had been an explosion at the Frankfurt PX, and I changed over to the American Forces Network, and there it was. Exactly. And I saw the photos the next day in the newspaper, the Stars and Stripes, and I saw that the bomb exploded at the pickup point about 30 feet, 40 feet from where I was parked. And about 15 minutes after I left. If I'd stayed a little bit longer, I might have been blown up or injured. But yeah, we took it very seriously. But then when Al-Qaeda declared war on us in the 1990s, we ignored it under the idiotic presidency of Bill Clinton, the self-important, egotistical blowhard who was our president during that time, with his abysmal foreign policy, which directly contributed to the events that we have unfolding around the world today. In some ways, even worse than Barack Obama or George Bush's foreign policy. But anyway, his cowardice in his foreign policy, Rwanda, Somalia, the Balkans, the list goes on and on and on. But we didn't take it seriously. We treated it as a law enforcement issue. We handicapped our intelligence services and agencies from cooperating within the federal government, sharing information. And I know this because I was counterintelligence and did counterterrorism this time frame. And I know exactly what the problems were. Anyway, so my issue is that the war on terrorism is real, whether we want to call it that or not. But we didn't go into Libya for terrorism. That's not why we went to Libya. We went to Libya because South Africa, Kenya, Nigeria, and Algeria demanded that the West do something about Muammar Gaddafi slaughtering people in the streets in Benghazi. Demanded that the world do something about it because they were too weak to do it themselves. Now, what they expected was for the West to threaten Muammar Gaddafi and for him to back down. But if you know anything about Muammar Gaddafi, he was never going to back down. His very rule was in jeopardy. And so he was not going to back down from attacking people and using his forces to attack rebels in the streets of Benghazi. And he didn't. So NATO, with the U.S. hiding behind the French and Brits, trailing in the third echelon of the flights coming in, went into bombed Libya. Not because of terrorism, but because of the tyrant Muammar Gaddafi. The irony is that Muammar Gaddafi, despite having been against the United States for decades, became one of the staunchest U.S. allies in the war on terrorism. Courtesy of Muammar Gaddafi, we rolled up lots of terrorists all over the Middle East, destroyed their communications networks, their resources, their bases, because he knew who all of them were. Muammar Gaddafi, seeing what happened in Iraq in 2003, became one of our best allies, and for about a decade cooperated extensively with the United States on counterterrorism, and that's a fact. But Barack Obama betrayed Muammar Gaddafi, and I'm not the only one to say that. Yovari Museveni would say the same thing because they were pals, and he would agree that the U.S. government betrayed Muammar Gaddafi. Now, I'm not saying we should have supported Gaddafi, and what he did was right. No, it wasn't. But we quickly changed sides and went after Gaddafi when it was popular, rather than trying to come up with some other solution. And now you have the mess you have today. But we did that on the behest of major regional hegemons in the African Union who demanded publicly and privately that we do something. And when we did it, they had the audacity to attack the West for going into Libya when they demanded it. Turkey's in Libya now with forces. What the hell is Turkey doing there? NATO ally, but a Middle Eastern country. Anyway, there, I got off track a little. I didn't get off track, but I was answering. It took a while to answer that. Let me see. Martin Mull, you hate mosquitoes. Me too. Ugh, they're nasty. Mahalamochi, okay. Like the page, please, guys. Thanks, Corlia. Thank you so much. Oh, sounds Swedish. Connie Potgita has just subscribed. Well, thank you, Connie. If you're here watching the stream, thank you so much. If you're not, you're just watching some other video and you join, thank you for that. Hemsbach. Where's my Hemsbach? Hang on, I get my therapy Hemsbach. Also, for those who are new to the channel, what you should know about on my channel is I'm a massive rugby fan, and one thing I do is I wear rugby kit at every show, whether it's a prepared video or live. And I've got 75, 100 rugby jerseys and then T-shirts and such. So I'm wearing today the USA Eagles. There you go. You see the Fly Emirates on there, and you see the USA rugby. Yep, this is one of our jerseys from a couple years ago. And when people set me off, it's okay because I don't see a psychiatrist. I have a therapy Hemsbach, and here's my Hemsbach. So this is Wilbur. So I have to make sure Wilbur doesn't get all his fur worn out, but Wilbur is my therapy Hemsbach. Made in Africa, that's right. This is an African stuffed animal. Comes from Africa. You can see this, a gift from Africa. They're born in Africa. This one I purchased in Botswana, at Botswana Crafts, out near the airport, Airport Junction, on the Ring Road in Gaborone. Anyway, and that sucker cost me 160 pulo, which at the time was a lot of money. It was like 5 pulo to the dollar. That was a lot of money. Now that's $16, $15. Yep, Eagles will be coming through the ranks, absolutely. Under the first season under Gary Gold, they went 9-0 in test matches, really impressive. Slow went backwards the year after that, but still did pretty well. Nico van Heerden just subscribed. Well, thank you, Nico. Appreciate that. Africa's built on corruption. Parts of it are, Brother Brewer, that's for sure. Daddy Mahalmoji. Good evening. I'm enjoying your shows. Where did you study journalism? Where in South African University? I didn't study journalism. I became a journalist. Let me explain how that happened really quick there for you, Daddy Malomochi. Yeah, so when I went to university as a freshman, there was an opportunity to work at the radio station. We had greens. The greens are the residential areas, and then some academic buildings around them. And most of the academic buildings are clustered in the college green, which was the center. I lived on the East Green. And East Green, we had a radio station, and we used carrier wave. For those who don't know what carrier wave is, that's when you transmit the radio signal through the electrical outlets, through the mains. So you get the signal by just plugging in your radio there. It doesn't come through the airwaves. So you get some feedback. It's not ideal, but it's inexpensive. You don't have to pay for broadcast towers. And so it was broadcast all over the East Green. So I went and we got some rudimentary training, learned how to be a disc jockey or DJ, and I did that. And so I learned how to use the turntable, how to do public service announcements, a little bit of advice on air, and I was an on-air personality, and I did that. And then what happened was I left after a year at university because I wasn't ready for university, and I went in the Army. When I was in the Army, they offered me, Janse van Rensburg has just donated 50 Rand through the Super Chat. Thank you so much for that. Appreciate that. Much appreciated, Hat. I really appreciate that Super Chat. Thank you so much for that. I'll put it to good use. He says, have a Starbucks. Thank you so much. That 50 would, 50 Rand, that would cover this and a little bit more. It would actually pay for this one. So thank you. Yeah, so I got out of, while I was in the Army, I was looking at staying enlisted rather than going back to university and becoming an officer. And they offered me broadcast journalist as a different specialty because I had a high academic score. You get a score or rating, and mine was very high. So I qualified for virtually everything that the Army had available for enlisted soldiers. And there was an opening. So they said, you'd like to be broadcast journalist? I'm like, yeah. So I'll go on television and be on the news? Yeah, because we have journalists in the military. And so what happened is they sent me to Frankfurt, and that's where that PX was. I parked my car, and I went to the American Forces. It was called Armed Forces Network then, but American Forces Network television station. And I walked in. The guy said, here, sit in the studio. I'm going to test the levels. So here's a script. Just read from that. So he hands me a script, and I'm just like, I just thought I'm just reading it for his levels. Okay, so character is the single most important attribute in a leader. Anybody who tells you that character isn't important apparently slept through the Clinton administration. Ooh. By the way, I'm reading from the Conservatives Handbook. There you go, from Phil Valentine. Anyway, so I just read it. I didn't put anything into it. I didn't focus, no emphasis, just kind of read the text. And he comes in and he goes, okay, that's good. I'm like, what do you mean that's good? Oh, no, we got it. Yeah, but I thought I was going to do the test. No, that's good enough. That'll be fine. I said, yeah, but what if they don't like it? You'll get it. So they sent that tape back to the States. This is the 1980s. And then 3 weeks later, I get a message back saying, not entry-level broadcast material. So they said I wasn't good enough to start the school, just to go to the school. My voice wasn't good enough. I'm like, okay. And they said, don't worry about it. You can do another tape after 30 days. So I waited a few more weeks. I took the test. And this time I was nervous because I'm like, I want to do this. And now I know this guy set me up. So I read it, and I was nervous, and I screwed up. So they sent it in. They said, not entry-level broadcast material. Ladies and gentlemen, 2 days after I exited from the Army in 1987 to go back and join the National Guard and return to university, my brother-in-law, who married my sister, he said, hey, do you need some work? Because I know you just got out of the Army, you just got back, and I work at a radio station as an engineer, and they need an on-air personality. Your sister said you used to work in radio. I said, yeah, on campus, but I'll come down. So I went to the radio station, WMPO in Middleport, Pomeroy, Ohio, went down there, and the manager said, hey, just jump in the booth there during the show with so-and-so. And I jumped in, and I put the headset on. The guy goes, hey, how are you? I'm Chris. So, Chris, I understand you just got out of the Army. Can you tell me a little bit what your experience was, where you were? And so I just started talking about my time in Germany and what it was like, and watched him do the youth. And anyway, when it was over, station manager says, so when can you start? So 2 days after I got out of the Army, I was offered a job as a paid professional radio personality, yet the U.S. Army said I was not entry-level broadcast material. So it just goes to show you how much the Army knows. By a similar token, similar thing happened to me when I was looking at those specialties. A thing I really wanted to be was a counterintelligence agent because I thought it was interesting. Plus, you had a chance for language school, and I wanted that. So I applied to the program. My scores were really high. My recommendations, my performance was great. And the guy, the retention NCO, said, don't worry about it. You got it. You're brilliant. It was a special program to get into. And he said, this is the most qualified candidate I've ever seen for it. And he was telling the truth. But what happened was part of that process is you're interviewed by a counterintelligence agent. So there was a counterintelligence agent who was a senior NCO. I was a junior NCO. And we were going to college classes at night in the same class. So we didn't have Burger Kings back then. We just had snack bars. And so I went to the snack bar waiting for my class one night, and he sits down with me and he just starts chatting with me. And great. So then I do the process, and I kind of call his office and say, listen, I just set up an interview with you because you're supposed to interview me. He goes, oh, no, we've already done that. When? Oh, at the snack bar like last week. I'm like, yeah, but we were just chatting. No, that's fine. Don't worry about it. So he sent his letter in. After a few weeks, it comes back and says denied. And the retention NCO is like, this doesn't make any sense. You're so qualified. I don't understand why you're denied. Do you have a criminal record? I'm like, no, I don't have a criminal record. So then we get the packet back. It's mailed from the States back to Germany a few weeks after that. And I go through it, and I read the recommendation from the agent, and it was not recommended. He recommended that I not be considered to be a counterintelligence agent. Now, he's a sergeant first class. I was the sergeant. So I caught him at class after that because we still had school. And I said, Sergeant Benj, I said, you didn't recommend me. Was there something wrong? He says, I've interviewed, I think it was like 56 people to be counterintelligence agents. I said, well, how many of you have you recommended? None. None. I said, so you've had 56 people over the course of your career that you had to interview, and you're not recommending a single one to be a counterintelligence agent. That's right. And that's why I didn't get it. Now, here's the irony, ladies and gentlemen. I got out of the Army, went back to university. 2 years later was a second lieutenant. I outranked him as a sergeant first class. I was a second lieutenant. I outranked him. And later, I became a counterintelligence agent. So there you go. Ladies and gentlemen. I wasn't entry-level broadcast material, and I wasn't good enough to be a counterintelligence agent, but I did both to great success. Back to the journalism thing. While I worked at the radio station, I got a phone call from the Associated Press one day, and the guy says, hey, what's the news on that teacher strike? I said, no, the teacher strike, they're meeting right now. I've already called over there. In fact, he goes, listen, can you write this up for me and then send it in over the wire? I'm like, okay, if you want to. And so I sent it over, and he said, make sure you put your name down. And I was published that night on the Associated Press with my byline, Chris Wyatt. And that was my first time. Now, I didn't get paid for that, but I contributed to the Associated Press back in 1987, I think that was. Yeah, and so that's when I kind of did it. I later became an analyst in the military as an intelligence officer and an editor. And I'm actually an editor for a journal right now, or a reviewer. Excuse me, not an editor, for a reviewer for a professional journal. And I just kind of got into journalism by reaching out to places. I've been published in professional military journals in Africa, in the U.S., from a journalism standpoint and news stories. I wrote an article about Botswana's arms deal a couple years ago in a South African military publication. And that's kind of how I got into it. Most recently, the things I've written so far as a journalistic approach have been for rugby at the Rugby World Cup. I really haven't written any journalism articles since then. I'm a source on a number of articles. If you read the Washington Examiner, which is a DC-based newspaper, they have a national security journalist on there, Abraham Mashi. And Abraham Mashi uses me frequently as a source for his articles on Africa. I've covered Mali, Libya, the Sahel for him, and things like that. So, yeah, that's not me as a journalist, but that's me contributing to journalism articles. So I hope I answered the question about the journalism thing. I hope that helps. As far as journalism schools in Africa, I actually have no idea what a good journalism school. I can tell you the Ohio University and the Scripps Institute is a fantastic school for journalism in Ohio. That I know. I attend Ohio University and have a fantastic journalism school. But you don't have to go to journalism school to be a good journalist. What you need to be a good journalist, in my mind, is critical thinking ability and the ability to analyze things objectively. And then it's all editing from there. It's all editing. Write it down, throw it up, throw the mud on the wall, see what sticks, edit it, change it around, make sure it's factual, make sure it's objective, and that's what it takes to be a journalist. That's my view. That doesn't mean that I haven't written things that have been biased, sometimes intentionally, but most of what I do when it comes to writing is objective because I'm trying to convince people or to win an argument, and you don't do that by embellishing or misleading. Well, that's what the media does today. That's all they do, embellish and mislead or simply distort and lie. I don't do that. At least not intentionally. Anyway, and if I do it, I'm making sure people know that I'm doing it. I make a point of pointing it out. So, Angela Ruhenhorst. I've never seen that surname before. That's a cool name, Ruhenhorst. I probably mispronounced it. I'm blessed to have a roof over my head, 2 retrenchments, earning a third of my qualified salary because I'm white with freckles. I understand your Afrikaans in Dutch and American English. I'm sorry to hear that, Angela. That says Melanie Meyer just subscribed, got the zombie going. Look at that, running up the hill. Thank you so much, Melanie, for subscribing. I'm sorry to hear that, Angela. Yeah, being retrenched is horrible, especially when it's racist. It's race-driven, which it is. You sound like a strong person, which Docbreaker says. Isn't that like the coolest name, guys? Docbreaker. I think he's actually a vampire. The guy's a vampire. Anyway, Hendo says, please hit the like button. Well, yes, please do that, folks. Okay, Jason's having fun now. He wants me to say Rui Reebok Ram. Rui Reebok Ram. Yeah, he's probably wetting himself laughing now. The Brew says, study cheese appreciation. Tian says, Liberia now has established electricity in Monrovia. 4G and roads are regional standard and didn't have any issues with crime. Yes, Tian, but that's true. You're updating folks. I was asked a question about when I was there. That was the situation I was there. And even 2 years ago, it was better, but it wasn't ideal. Now, the reason Liberia has established electricity now is because of USAID. That's where that's come from. Die Rui Ribakram Rukriem in die Rita. Stop it, Brew. Yes, Lazan says she thought I was in Liberia for the oil. No, it was for the alluvial diamonds. That's, blood diamonds. Anyway, what else? Quentin, as in life terms and conditions apply. That's true. Tech Cyril, Quentin's having fun. Just like SA, what's just like SA? No electricity? What's going on here? I have driven armor-plated cash transit vehicles. Oh, wow, cool. I've driven armor-plated Toyota Land Cruiser. I had an armor-plated one for that. Yep. Well, folks, we're an hour into this. I'm not going to stop yet, but just to give an update, you're listening to Chris Wyatt Africa on the Indaba Africa channel here on YouTube. I'm Chris Wyatt, retired U.S. Army Colonel, and we're just doing through a stray voltage stream, talking about the news. And today, really haven't got to the news, just talking about the chat because people are asking lots of questions. I'm happy to answer them, and people seem to be enjoying it. Let's see. So Brett says, when you were in Germany, did you get to know any defectors from East Germany? What were their stories? I've known people who lived in East Germany, but that was after the wall came down. Didn't really know any defectors because people didn't want people to know that they come from the East for the most part. So I've talked to a lot of people who live in the East, and they were hot full. They had enough of it. It was terrible. Ken je iemand met een gasthuis probeer bij Hulkrij? Tell me that, Henrik. Okay, I'm pushed night all, and there's Hertz super chat. Thank you. Morton says, you mentioned you attend university before enlisting, so why did you not go straight in officer's course after basics? Or is that not how it works? Okay, so that's a good question, Morton, and no one's ever asked that question, so you get a good job for asking the question. All right, so here's the deal. In the U.S. Army, in U.S. military, we have multiple sources of commissioning. So you can become an officer by attending the academy, West Point, the Naval Academy, Annapolis, the Air Force Academy out in Colorado. You can become a graduate of that, and then you become an officer in any of the service. You can go to West Point and then wind up in the Navy or Air Force. You can actually do that, and vice versa. But most people go to that service that they attended their academy. So that's one way, and that's historically the early way we did it. The other way is a direct commission. Direct commission is back in the day, like the Civil War and predating that. Whenever we needed officers, typically the gentry or the wealthy would be commissioned and granted a commission as an officer, and they would form regiments. They would raise the regiment themselves. And that's why they were given a commission, not because of their leadership abilities. Sometimes it was, but usually because they had the ability to actually convince people to join regiments and then form regiments. So that's how people got commissioned. So we still have direct commissions, but don't do it that way. Direct commission now is normally someone in a specialty. If you have a dentist or an obstetrician or a heart surgeon and they want to come in the military or we need a specialty, we can do a direct commission. Now they get a little officers finishing school, which they must attend for a few months to learn how to salute, wear their uniforms, military customs and courtesies, so they don't step out of bounds. But that's direct commission. That's a small number of officers. West Point is about 1,000, 1,200 officers a year max, 800 to 1,200, depending on what time frame we're in. 75% of all officers in the U.S. Army come from ROTC, Reserve Officer Training Corps, which we send our officers to civilian universities. They attend, they're not part of the military. They attend there as students. They enroll in military science courses, and at some point they sign a contract that they will become an officer when they complete all the studies. That's after 2 years, but you don't have to do that before 2 years. You can just take the classes, and lots of people take the classes. And then the other source is Officer Training School, or Officer Candidate School in the U.S. Army. OTS in the Air Force, OCS in the Army. OCS, you must have 2 years of college, 2 years of semester credit. I didn't have 2 years. I actually did by the time I finished my enlistment. I had 2 years. I earned an associate degree on active duty. But you have to have 2 years of credit in order to go to Officer Candidate School, a recommendation, and be fit and all these things. The problem with Officer Candidate School, from my perspective, is it's a fantastic way for people who've already completed their undergraduate studies to become an officer, because they can never attend ROTC for whatever reason. Then they can enlist in the Army with the enlistment option of finishing basic training and then going to Officer Candidate School. If you don't finish Officer Candidate School, then you go back to being an enlisted soldier and you go back to your specialty and you do that for the rest of your enlistment. If you have a college degree, you finish basic training, you finish Officer Candidate School, you become an officer. Now, I could have been enlisted already and applied for Officer Candidate School, and I was actually considering doing that. But I thought about it, and this was the problem. I was in the Signal Corps. And in the Signal Corps, whenever there's an exercise or combat, you're gone. You go before everyone else deploys because you have to get out there and establish communications so that when troops fall in, they have communications in place. You stay until everybody's back because you have to keep the communications in place for them to return. So I was in the field 2 to 3 weeks of every month my first year in Germany on exercises. And that was cool. I enjoyed it. I learned a lot. It was a great experience. But once you get families, if people get families, and plus it wears on you after a while. Every single one of my platoon leaders, which is what I would have become as a lieutenant, every single one of my platoon leaders had no life. They worked 5 to 7 days a week, oftentimes 6 or 7 days a week. They were working 12 to 16 hours a day as a lieutenant. And I'm like, okay, I don't mind the work, but when am I supposed to finish? Because if you come in with 2 years of college, you have 7 years to complete your degree or you get kicked out. I didn't want to become an officer and then work hard and never be able to finish my degree and be kicked out because I didn't have it. Plus, I wanted the education. I earned the education benefits. I contributed to my own education fund from my own money. My meager salary went into that. $100 every month from my $300 salary went into my education fund. Now they just give it away for free. You don't have to pay for it. You get $21,000 a year. You don't have to pay anything, which, by the way, I'm entitled to, but that's another story. So I wanted to use that education. I wanted to become an educated, literate person better than I was because I had a decent education, but I wasn't at the level I wanted to be. So that's why I went back to University in Morton and got my degree. And I wanted to compete to be an intelligence officer, which was difficult to do, especially as a male, because it's one of the specialties where women could enter. Women couldn't become infantry, artillery, armor, aviation at that time. Only the combat support and combat service support arms. So combat support was intelligence. Women can enter that field. And so 25% of the officer corps there was female, 25 to 35%, as opposed to just 12% of the actual officer corps. So they were represented in higher numbers. So as a male, you had a more difficult time becoming a military intelligence officer. But if you did well at university with great grade point average, you did well as a cadet, and you get a good recommendation. And I was, of 69 cadets commissioned that year, I was number 2 in my high university class based on the recommendation of Professor of Military Science. Plus I had a 3.5 grade point average out of 4. And I did really well at camp. So I got what I wanted, which was intelligence. And that's why we did it. That's how I did, I should say, not why we did it. Monkey pushing wood. I was in Nam. Okay. Cool. Excellent. We're about in Vietnam. Power vacuum. Okay. Did you have any pets? Do you have any pets? I'm not answering these personal questions. I don't have any pets now. I've had pets before. I don't have any currently right now. Do you get to work with many African immigrants that were soldiers? Actually, I have, Brett. In the Army and since then, I've met many people who joined the U.S. military and came to the U.S. as a consequence of being from Africa and joining. Absolutely right. Birmingham. Oh, Birmingham. Aha, that's funny. So I have worked with immigrants, not just African immigrants, but Latin American immigrants. So when I was enlisted and I was in the Signal Corps, for some strange reason, a lot of our class were Puerto Ricans and other Hispanics, a lot of Puerto Ricans. And so, not class, a lot of our platoon was actually Puerto Rican or other Hispanic. And so I knew several Hispanic soldiers who enlisted from abroad to join U.S. Army because it's a fast track if you join the military and you serve honorably to become a U.S. citizen. It's quicker than if you just immigrate to the country. It shaves several years off of it. So anyway, I think after 3 years, I could be mistaken, I think after 3 years of service in the military, honorable, you can apply for U.S. citizenship. So we've had foreign citizens in uniform die in our service of the United States in conflict. And most recently in Iraq and Afghanistan, we've had people who are foreign nationals serving in our military. Now, you cannot be a foreign national and become a commissioned officer. You must be an American citizen, whether natural or naturalized. But you can't be a citizen, or you can't be an officer unless you're a citizen, but you can be an enlisted soldier. So, yeah, there you go. Lynn, somebody's taking off. Is Lynn? Good night, Lynn. Take care. Have a good evening. Thanks for being on the stream earlier and calling in. We really appreciate you calling in earlier. It was awesome. Thanks a lot. Let's see. So, that's that stuff. I think I've caught up on the chat. Let me just double check and make sure I've caught up on the chat. You guys had a lot of questions tonight. Thank you so much. Benjamin Clerk lost the connection. Sorry about that. I hope you got it back. Am I still on? Yeah, I'm still on. Just double checking when I saw that. I want to make sure that I'm still streaming. What's it like for foreigners studying the U.S. military? Do you have some examples, possibilities? Well, I can give a lot of examples, Rigel T. For instance, I have sent a few hundred African soldiers and officers back to U.S. to attend U.S. military training, and sent a handful of Africans back to attend West Point and or go to U.S. training programs. So I have experience from sending people and briefing and debriefing them and talking to them about their experiences. But I also have a more direct experience in that I was the director of African Studies at U.S. Army War College, and I taught national security strategy and policy. I taught African studies. I taught theory of warfare and strategy, many other courses, national security strategy, as I already said that, security sector reform, many other courses at the Army War College. And I had a lot of international students from all around the world, Pakistanis, Indians, Egyptians, Dutch, Brits, South Africans, Botswana, lots of others from around the world and all over Africa as my students. And I interact heavily with international students because I've been an international student. I've been in their boots. I was a student at l'École d'État-Major in Tunis, in Bardo, Tunis, which is the staff college for the Tunisian military. And that course, I'm a graduate of the, which class is it? The 20th or 21st promotion or class in 2001. Yeah, 2001. So I attended that as a foreign student. So I know what it's like to be a foreign student in a foreign language in a foreign country attending that institution with all the other students from that country around you. Now, in that course, there were only a handful of us who were international students. There were 2 Mauritanians, one from the Gendarmerie and one from the Army, who later became pretty important in the Army. The one in the Army actually interacted with him again when I was in Mauritania. And then we had a student from Niger who was in the Gendarmerie. Main Gopher, excuse me, just subscribed. Well, thank you so much for that subscription, Main Gopher. So I had the guy from Niger, Ibrahim Mamadou Bagadoma, was my best friend, salt of the earth, wonderful human being. Later rose to become very senior in the Gendarmerie in Niger. So he was my best friend at the course. His French was impeccable, and he spoke English, of course, because he'd gone to the military police officers course back in Fort McClellan as a lieutenant, and then went back to the advanced course when it was there, I think still, and also attended other courses in the U.S., and then went to India for his war college. And he was at the staff college in Tunisia with me. So we were really good friends. I've actually been to his home in Niamey, Niger, when I was stationed there. Actually, I can tell you that story very quickly if people are curious about it. But what happened was, Brew, I'm not scared of your comments. I have told people I don't answer questions about immediate family. I don't ask my guests about their immediate family, and I don't talk about my immediate family, whether I have one or do not have one. I've told people the internet's a nasty place, and people doxing and people do things, and it's not fair to other people. Now, when I talk to my guests and I interview my program, I ask if it's okay to talk about siblings and or parents or grandparents before we ever raise it. I do not raise those issues because people's privacy matters. And I'm not going to compromise other people's privacy to answer those questions. So I'm not skirting your questions, DeBrew. I've already made it clear on this broadcast that I don't talk about immediate family. There you go. All right. I got off track there. Croy served in the Peace Corps in Niger. Awesome. When were you there, Croy? Awesome. Oh, that was where I was, Niger. So here's the deal. So let me tell you about that. So I was in Niger. I went there, and my visa, I was stationed in Germany at the time, the U.S. Africa Command, and I needed a visa, of course, to go to Niger. So I had to send my passport to Berlin, because that's where the embassy for Niger was at, to get my visa to go to Niger. I sent it there. The embassy in Niger gave it back to the German postal service, the Bundespost, and they had the receipt for it. And then the German Bundespost lost my passport for 6 weeks. I was on the verge of going to Frankfurt to get an emergency official passport to replace the one when it finally came back. And so for 6 weeks, I couldn't get to Niger to do my tour there. And what happened was 05 to 07. I was there in Niamey in 2011, 2012 timeframe. Cool. Oh, that's awesome. Thank you for sharing that, Croy. So I went... I finally got it, but what I didn't want to do is didn't want to tell my dear friend, Ibrahim Mamadou Bagadoma, that I was coming and get him excited in case my tour got canceled. I wasn't going to be assigned there anymore because, that could happen. So I finally got it after 6 weeks. I scheduled my flights. I got to Niamey. I showed up at the embassy, and then they put me up in a hotel because I stayed in a hotel for much of my stay there. And I asked the local national who worked at the embassy, who worked for me, whom I'd known for many years, from other events outside the country. He'd come to conferences and such, so I'd known him for a long time. And I said, hey, did you get in touch with my friend yet? He goes, no, I held off because, like you said, we don't want to get him thinking you're coming. You're not. I said, well, can you give me his number? So he gave me his number. I got a SIM card, and I called him up, and I said, hello. And he goes, hello? I said, Ibrahim, how are you? Chris? Yeah. Where are you? Now he spoke a little bit in French. I'm just doing this English so people keep up. He goes, where are you at? I said, I'm at Namneste. He said, Namneste? In Niamey? Namneste is an Indian restaurant not too far from my hotel. It was walking distance, and the food was quite good. He says, yeah. I said, yes. He goes, I'll be there in a minute. So he said, so I hung up the phone. I'm waiting for my food. My food hadn't quite arrived. He's there 7-8 minutes later. By the way, the drive from his house to Namneste safely is about a 10 to 15 minute drive. So Ibrahim comes up, of course, the hugs. He sits down with me. We chat for a bit. And he's like, what are you doing here? I said, no, I've come to serve here at the embassy. Oh my gosh, this is amazing. He was the inspector general, I think, for the gendarmerie at that point, a full colonel, and I was a lieutenant colonel at the time. Anyway, so what happened was he was a major in Tunisia, and I was a captain, so he was always a little bit ahead of me. So we hung out, we went together. He got me access to see some important people I needed to see to do my job better. It was fantastic. And invited me over to his house for dinner several times. Well, when we were in Tunisia, he was married. And he said, he talked about Niger. People in Niger want to have big families. And so George Shares just subscribed. Thank you, George, for subscribing to the channel, Chris White Africa. So when we were in Tunisia, we talk at school on breaks and such. He's like, yeah, I can't go back to Niger. I said, why? Because my wife wants to have more children. I said, you don't want to have kids? He said, no, I got enough kids. We don't need any more kids. So after he went back to Tunisia, we weren't in touch for a few years. Well, we got in touch later on. Well, he had 2 daughters that came after he returned from Tunisia. And I nicknamed his daughters Après Tunis. So that's their nickname, Après Tunis, which means after Tunis. His wife, a typical Nigerian woman, wanted a large family with multiple children. He was more westernized or practical and said, 1 or 2 is enough. We're going to stop. Anyway, so he wound up having three or four children. And the 2 girls were Après Tunis. And so we kind of nicknamed that. That's kind of a sweet story. The family, they still call those girls collectively Après Tunis. Fantastic, great, salted. They're a wonderful human being. He told me something very interesting about myself, which I had never thought about. He said to me one day, because I'm not a particularly devout person, I have faith, but I don't go to church or practice my religion in organized settings. And he said to me, he said, Chris, you're one of the most moral and nicest and best people I know. I said, well, thanks, Ibrahim. That's very kind of you. I said, but why do you say that? He said, well, it's because it's a consequence of Christianity. And he's a Muslim. I said, what do you mean? I don't go to church. He goes, no. He said, but the morals, the values, the mores, the norms that you live, the structure that you live in is a consequence of Christianity. I said, okay, there's probably some truth to that. He said, yeah. He said, no, but that's why. And I thought about that. And I said, it's actually true. People lose track of the fact that the U.S. and other countries, this is Judeo-Christian country found on Judeo-Christian beliefs. And those mores and values have gone a long way to proper behavior. And whether I was a devout Christian or not and attended church faithfully or not, his point about the larger structure of society had merit. And it was very insightful of him. But Ibrahim Mamadou Bagadoma, fantastic human being, wonderful person, great family, and wonderful kids, après Tunis. What's it like for? Oh, I think I answered all those questions. Cool. I was going to bring some things in from the. Let me see if I can get this very quickly here. I want to get over to the British and Irish Lions. Let me show this very quickly. So let me get this thing up on the screen. On the screen, not the scream. Okay, so I want to show you guys this very quickly. This is about the British and Irish Lions incoming tour for next year. I just got to get to the. Where's my browser at? Sorry, guys. I'm trying to find the browser here. It just disappeared. Let me close that. There it is. Okay. All right. There we go. So let me shut down my camera now. Here you go. Watch this for a moment. Be patient.
People were flying out after the first test. No time difference. You know, booking a ticket on a Friday to watch the test match, to fly back home Sunday, to be in work again Monday morning. And you now have 30,000 plus people who are prepared to go to the other side of the world to watch a rugby team play. Nobody else does that.
So there you go, folks. British and Irish Lions tour upcoming. Should be interesting. We'll see what happens. I'll get that browser to close now. I keep losing my browser here. There we go. Right, yeah, so that's coming up next year in 2021. The fixture dates are, I've already run through those, and they'll be playing the Stormers. They'll be playing a South African Invitational side, the South Africa A side, 3 games against the Springboks, and also be playing against the Sharks and the Bulls. So the 3 big teams in South Africa. Sorry, Lions fans. Sorry, Southern Kings and Cheetahs. But the 3 big are the Sharks, the Bulls, and the Stormers. Benjamin de Klerk says, your friend sounds like a very good-hearted, dedicated friend. Yeah, he's fantastic. Wonderful. Never, what's this? What can I do? Kami's taking it away. Oh. Croy says, what do you think about New Zealand breaking away from South Africa in terms of Super Rugby? Well, I'm kind of mixed on that, Croy. That's actually a very good question. Thank you for asking that question. I have mixed feelings on it, and let me explain what I mean by that. First off, I'm of the personal opinion that Super Rugby has really screwed up the competition over the last decade. When it was Super 12, Super 14, I think is when it was best. It had the right mix. When it got 15, that was probably the cap with 5 teams in each of the 3 countries, Australia, New Zealand, and South Africa. But once they got beyond that and they expanded to 18 teams, they really thinned out the talent. Because remember, there's other rugby going on around the world. Other professional rugby. Japan has it. Europe has it. Argentina has professional rugby. And now the U.S. has got a league. But the U.S. Would have only been slightly competing with Super Rugby. It did a little bit because the seasons overlapped towards the end. But actually, they overlapped quite a bit, I should say. But we weren't always going to get top talent early years. But eventually, the U.S. would draw the top talent, and that would have weakened Super Rugby. So when they expanded, it was kind of problematic. And then they played this game where the teams would only play in their conference. So the South African and Argentinian team would play. And then the New Zealand and New Zealand teams, along with Japan, would play, and then the Australian teams would play in their league, or vice versa. No, the Japan team, I think, was in the Australia league. But anyway, and that really weakened the competition further, so that the top flight talent didn't play each other until you got to the playoffs, and it became kind of a national derby. I hate that derby; it's spelled derby, but they say derby. It became a national derby instead of Super Rugby, and the appeal of Super Rugby was the top flight talent playing in a professional league from Australia, New Zealand, South Africa, Southern Hemisphere against each other. And when it was Super 12, Super 14, even Super 15, it was awesome, especially Super 14. But it got weakened and watered down. And then they reformed it. They dumped the Southern Kings and the Cheetahs from South Africa, dumping them out of it, but keeping the Japan franchise. And they dumped one of the, I think the Australia, Western Perth, the Western Force from Perth were dumped as well. And that didn't strengthen the competition. It really didn't. So it's unfortunate. So New Zealand leaving Super Rugby, I'm not surprised because I've been predicting it for a year and I've been talking about it incessantly since January because it seems to have picked up steam. And it looks like it's going to happen. What gets confusing now is that South Africa can't survive a tournament. They can't have Super Rugby in being a domestic tournament. It has to be international to draw people from abroad and to make money when they travel. Currie Cup attendance is abysmal and Super Rugby attendance is bad or worse. The only people who ever seem to go to rugby these days in South Africa are at varsity games. It's really sad and pathetic, ladies and gentlemen, and shame on South Africans for not going. And I know there's lots of reasons for it, but that's your game. No, I know it's from the town of Rugby. It was created in England, but rugby is a South African game. It is your game. That's why I'm a Springbok fan. And watching 1,200 people at Loftus Versfeld for a Super Rugby match, very disappointing. Very disappointing. And watching only 25,000 rock up for a Springboks match, even under Alistair Coetzee, should have been more people showing up at a game. It should be sold out venues. I've been to a Springboks game at Ellis Park against the All Blacks. Sold out. No empty seats. Awesome experience. Anyway, so I'm kind of torn. There's a real possibility that South Africa teams like the Bulls and the Stormers and the Sharks are likely to migrate to Premiership Rugby, Pro 14, and or the French League. And maybe one of those leagues would take 2 teams or 1 or something like that. We'll see. Whatever the case is, something has to be done. If New Zealand's going to go its own way, something needs to be done because the South African teams need that. They need more than just Currie Cup. You need more competition. So we'll see what happens. I'm disappointed in New Zealand, but I'm disappointed in New Zealand all the time. I'm not an All Blacks fan, so they disappoint me all the time. So that's kind of where I'm at, Croy. I hope that answered your question. Please say your friend's name again, just a little slower this time. Karen says, okay, Ibrahim Mamadou Bagadoma. Sharks are the only big team in South Africa, says Morton. The Brew doesn't like Province. I guess he's a Lions fan. Sharks are the best. Stormers has the best depth. Lions, love you. Leafling. Bulls. SJ Wheeler, you're absolutely right about Super Rugby died when the conferences came in. Yeah, it did, SJ. They really screwed up the sport, and it hasn't recovered because of their poor management. But listen, rugby doesn't have a long history of great management across the board. I mean, how can you not fill up stadiums in South Africa? If nothing else, if you can't fill the stadium out, go out to townships and go to schools and varsities and hand out the tickets the day of the game. So you can fill it up with kids and get them interested in the sport. Get a bus, bring buses in, bring the kids in so they can go to the games for free. Something like that. You got to be more creative. And that's just the South Africa side. I mean, it's no better in Australia. The stadiums are 3/4 empty in Australia for test matches between the Wallabies and Springboks. The only time they fill up anymore is between the Wallabies and the All Blacks because they're not going to get shellacked. And a lot of New Zealanders live in Australia, so they fill the stadiums. But yeah, it's really sad. But you go to a game in New Zealand, a local varsity, a pickup game from people just playing on a club, and the bleachers are full of people. You go to all professional games. Now, this is different. Right now, you're watching Super Rugby. When they restarted this New Zealand conference here for this little thing that's going on right now, the first weekend, there were a lot of people at the games. Now, people aren't going. The competition's not as good as people hoped it would be. Some of the games are really good. Some of them are really off the mark. So anyway, I think there's a lot of stuff going on that has to do with this. The soccer teams fill up the stadiums. Rugby keeps drying up. Yeah, well, okay, folks. The argument people say is that that's because rugby is a white sport. Well, there's still 4.8 million white people in South Africa, and they're not going to the games. But the crowd is much more diverse than whites. You see coloreds go to rugby games. You see lots of black South Africans. Ellis Park has seen a lot of black folks go to games there. So anyway, there's a lot of reasons for it. I've talked about it in some of the things I've written and done. So there's only one state, and that's the Free State. Okay. SJ Wheeler says the Bulls, the only South African team to win Super Rugby 3 times. In fact, I think the only South African team to ever win Super Rugby, SJ, not just 3 times, the only team to ever win it. Gina DW says, hi, I'm a newbie from beautiful Cape Town. You have a great show. Thanks. And bye, Donkey. You're most welcome, Gina. Thank you for coming on. If you've become a subscriber, you're most welcome to. Thank you. Tickets are insane expensive. It's a matter of perspective, Tian. I'll accept that. But from my perspective, $8 to $28 for a ticket is dirt cheap. And that's not because I'm a Bill Gates rich American, but you try to go to a professional sports game here, unless it's a baseball game, you're not going to get a ticket for less than $50 to sit way at the top of the bleachers. Whereas with the test match between the All Blacks and the Springboks at Ellis Park that I went to, I think I paid like $24 for my seat, and I was near the middle of the pitch. It was pretty cool, about 15 rows up. That's what they did with PE and cricket. In PE with cricket when I was a kid. Cricket was school holiday daycare for my parents' health. Then I was a park in a massive town pool. Yeah, it was safe back then. Yeah, no, but that's what they should do. Get kids out there, or get rugby clubs, teams, players, bring them in. Now, of course, I know the challenge there is you set the thing up where if you keep giving away free tickets, nobody's going to buy them. But there are ways to do this, folks. Trust me. In terms of colors in rugby, ask the people in PE. Yeah, if Croy, you're saying, is there a mix? Okay. Tickets are insane expensive. And then Tian says, we used to pay $50 and $15 for a beer. Now it's over $250. Well, okay, fair enough, Tian, and that's a good point. But $250 is at the current. Now I realize when you're paid in rand, it doesn't matter what the dollar amount is, but that's why it's a matter of perspective. So $250. Oops, hang on. My math is not that great. It's a little over $10 divided by 18, which is the rand is now. That's $14 for a ticket. Yeah, that's dirt cheap. That's even baseball ticket prices for minor league baseball. Lions technically won the Proto Super Rugby tournament in 1983. Did they really? Okay, I didn't realize this, Jay Wheeler. So my apologies. I was only aware that the Bulls are the only ones to ever win it from South Africa, which is another disappointment. The Crusaders have won it far too many times. They've run away with Super Rugby far too many times from New Zealand. So that's also part of it too. People lose interest if the same people win all the time. It's like the All Blacks. When they were on their running streak there for like 8 years, top of the world rankings, it's like, oh, God. I will say this about them, though. They were always entertaining. To watch them on the pitch, even though I don't like the All Blacks, they were always an entertaining team, and that really made a huge difference. Cheaper than college football tickets. Oh, a lot cheaper, Martin. Absolutely a lot cheaper. Yep. Sharks won. Really? The Sharks won? All right, well, I stand corrected, Croy. Apparently the Sharks won, and maybe the Lions won, too. Okay. All right, so my apologies. Okay. Yes, the Stormers. Kelly7756 has just subscribed. Thank you for subscribing to the channel. Chris White Africa. So much for that. Wonder what the 7756 stands for. Cheaper than smokes now. Yeah, well, with illegal cigarettes, that's definitely cheaper than that. Stormers never won, so it's not too Oh, that was a dig, S.J. Wheeler. No, I'm a Stormers Western Province fan through and through. Have been for a long time. And it is disappointing. Alistair Coetzee, one of the problems I had with him before he's ever picked to be the Springbok coach is that he doesn't have the pounce mentality of a lion. The Stormers should have won 2, possibly 3 Super Rugby championships under his time, and they should have won 5 Currie Cups. Not 2. Should have won 5. That team was loaded with talent. Some coaching decisions when they got to the damn playoffs cost them each and every time. Very disappointed. The Stormers should have won Super Rugby 3 times, easily, during the Alistair Coetzee era. Yep. Good number of subscribers today. Yeah, Karen, actually great. And I see you've got the Moai there next to your name. That's awesome. Congratulations for the second month of that. Here, let me just check very quickly, folks, on what's going on. By the way, for those tuning in now to the stream, thank you so much for subscribing. We've hit 5,200 subscribers. Wow, look at that. That rocks, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you so much for that. It's really cool. By the way, some people want to give me grief about talking about subscribers. It's not about the number of subscribers. That does matter. But one of the things is I try to get interesting guests on the program, and I had a guest back out, and I didn't get a reason, but I just had a suspicion it had to do with the number of subscribers. When you go and ask someone, particularly a notable personality to appear on your channel, if you've got 137 subscribers, you're not going to get many people of note to come on your channel. If you have 1,000, you might, 2,000, 3,000. When you get to 4,000 or 5,000, 10,000, then you can draw people into your channel and get them to watch it. So that's really an important consideration. So that's why subscribers matter. Plus, it's nice that people have an interest at least to take a moment to subscribe to your channel. So what I really care about is how often people watch the channel and what you get out of the channel. That's what really matters. Speaking of that, the video that I did on Hatful with Ramaphosa, the NCCC and ANC is still trending, although it's getting late in South Africa, so it's dropping off for the evening. But I had 4 consecutive hours with over 1,000 views per hour. That's awesome. Thank you all so much for that. And this hour, the previous hour, got 563, which was rather late in South Africa. And that video is, of course, mostly of interest to people in South Africa. But we're approaching 20,000 views on that in just 4 days. Thank you so much for that, ladies and gentlemen. Really awesome. Cool stuff. And also for those who tuned in for the live stream special feature earlier with Mahrabani, the South African postgraduate student who is based in the Netherlands right now, where he's attending Leiden University. I really enjoyed that stream. And that one has had over 1,200 views on that as well. We had a peak of 175 concurrent viewers. So thank you all so much for that. An extra 252 have watched it after the fact. Wow, thank you so much for that. I hope I take that as a endorsement for the content that you guys enjoyed it. Really do appreciate it. Thank you so much for that. All right, what else? So we're up to an hour and a half here, folks. Okay, so let me see if there's some other news I want to cover here really quick. Oh, yeah, let me do this. What are your thoughts on this one? So this one is something that disturbs me greatly, but has a lot of traction. Tian Preklasa. Well, thank you, Tian. Okay, there we go. South Africa is getting a new universal income grant. This is from the 14th, so a couple of days ago, and there's been updates on this. South Africa introduced a universal basic income grant as part of a range of packages to help the country's unemployed, says Social Minister Lindwe Zulu. Zulu did not provide details on how the grant would be funded or its size. Yeah, because there's no money to fund it. That's why she didn't provide details. South Africa is bankrupt. It's living off the crumbs and gifts of the World Bank, the Chinese, the New Development Bank, and what money it can get from taxation, which isn't much these days. Yeah, anyway, so that's supposedly a 500 Rand a month grant. That's what they want to do. So the ANC's solution to solving South Africa's problems is to hand out more money to people, whether they deserve it or not, whether they've earned it or not, and they're going to do it to the tune of $500 per adult. And that $500 is equal to $28 US. Are you serious? And then the next 2 days later, how much the grant will cost South Africa was written by Business Tech, talking about how much this is going to cost. It would be payable to anyone age 18 to 59, and it would start with those in the 18 to 24 and 50 to 59 age groups, and would be 500 Rand per month. It would not be based on unemployment, but be available to anyone not receiving any other benefit, including unemployment. It would be administered by SASSA, who pays the current grants via a prepaid card system. Well, there you go. There's no chance of fraud in that, is there, ladies and gentlemen? There's not going to be any fraud in that scheme. There you go. There you go. Okay, so SJs went ahead and looked up all the Super Rugby championships. The Crusaders 10 times exactly. Brumbies, Blues, Bulls, Chiefs, Waratahs, Hurricanes, Highlanders, Reds. Okay, I don't see the Lions or the Sharks there. All right, I was willing to admit I was wrong, but if that's looked up, I wasn't wrong. Ha ha ha. Just kidding. Lezon says, I lost my neighbor's 5-year-old at the previous game. It was the worst feeling ever, but found him with painted face. Oh my gosh, that must have been terrifying. Ooh, especially if it wasn't your kid. Oh my gosh, that must have been crazy. Oh, you guys have jumped ahead. Let me get back here in the chat. Somehow. Oh, okay. Did I miss these things? Hendrick says, used to drive 400 kilometers to Bloemfontein to watch rugby, 250 PE to watch rugby. Well, that's awesome. That's a rugby fan. I missed that comment. Sorry. And then let me come back here. Lezant says, PE cricket still have free access for kids for most games. Few of my friends go to almost all the games. It's a cheap outing. You pack a picnic. Yeah, it's kind of cool. I did like that about the cricket. That was interesting. Stormers bred in Gauteng province. So, yeah. Well, Brew, according to Ronaldo Host, they're all from the Eastern Cape. No, some of them are from the Eastern Cape, including Sia Khaleesi. Lions never won. They were the Cats, only the Bulls, technically Lions. Okay, cool. Karen loves Lezan's name. It is kind of cool. There's a story behind that. Yeah, more debt. That's right, more debt. Or raiding the pension funds. Yeah. So then what are you going to have if they take your money away? Just crazy. Fantastic sense of humor. Who, me? Well, thank you. If you're thinking that. Buying votes, absolutely. Martin from here says, students, I'm 200 pounds of pure South African muscle. Not much scares me. Okay. Well, we'll make sure we don't get in your way, Martin. Anyway, yeah, so this basic income grant is nonsense. Let me explain why it's nonsense, folks. Okay, first off, it inculcates the wrong values. And then before somebody says, oh, you're callous, you're cold, you're uncaring, you're cruel, you're selfish. No, you're full of crap if you tell me that. I'm not. I do care. But you don't lift people up by handing things out. Human beings are wired in a way that makes that counterproductive. That's not how it works. If you give everybody 1,000 Rand per month or $1,000 per month, it devalues money because everybody's going to get 1,000. So that's the base. So you have inflation. Prices will go up. There's no differentiation of people on anything around that range, only things above that. So you undermine the purpose of giving the money away in the first place. You devalue money by giving it away. That's the first problem. The second is you inculcate the wrong values. Instead of learning to work hard, to save, to be thrifty, to be responsible, people can count on a handout. And people do that. We've seen generational welfare in the United States from people who know that they're always going to get a check. You get knocked up at 14, you're going to get money from an overgenerous state. This is not good. Not to mention that it's morally wrong to take from people who work and earn to give to others who don't. Now, that's a difference between Michelle Hutton just subscribed. Thank you so much, Michelle. Boy, the zombie has been running across Mahalisburg quite a bit today, so thank you so much for that. There's a difference between people who fall on hard times or misfortune or people who have mental handicaps or physical handicaps. That's different. That's something society can do to take care of people. But just giving money to people who are perfectly healthy and capable of working rather than expecting them to work is not helpful. This is all part of trying to make everybody the same. They want everybody to be like the Netherlands, where we all have the same level of income. There's no difference. The corporate executive who makes decisions which determine fates and lives gets no more than the guy on the assembly line. That's asinine. What's the point of achieving anything if you're not going to come out ahead and be able to get more or do more for your skills? It doesn't value skill. Giving basic income grants is wrong. The fact that 17 million South Africans live off of income grants already is pathetic and sad and a horrible reflection of South African society. The ANC seems to think that it makes them look magnanimous. It doesn't. It shows you failed. You have failed as a society and as a political party to uplift, to create a culture of entrepreneurialism so that people will see value in work, in contributing to society rather than taking from society. It's morally bankrupt and it's wrong. And idiots in this country try to do it here too. Like Yang, this moron that ran for president. Supposedly a tech brilliant genius. The more I learned about him, the less impressed I was. But Ted Yang, or whatever his first name was, they loved him. They loved him because he talked about a basic income grant of $1,000 a month. Go away. Go away. People should work for their money. They should work for their income. And they should be rewarded for their special skills and abilities. That's right. That's where I sit. Anyway, so people disagree. Please feel free to jump in the chat and tell me if you disagree. That's fine. Yeah, the Sharks were in 4 finals, 4 losses. That's what I thought. They got to the finals. Stormers got to the semifinals. I don't think they ever got to the finals. I would be amazed how many foreigners in social grants in South Africa. Why are any foreigners in social grants in South Africa? There should be nobody in social grants. Now, the UK has that problem, but that's a self-inflicted wound. In case that there are hundreds of thousands of Mozambicans with SAID books, all ANC loyal voters. Yeah, they're not even South Africans. That's a real problem. It's called corruption, that's for sure, bro. Benjamin de Klerk says, absolutely, Chris. Freehound, not always a good idea. Money especially. No other side to it. Oh, thank you, Brew. No other side to it. Liaison says, there's a reason why the old adage, give a man a fish. Yep, but people seem not learn from history. Plain human nature. We all need to feel we deserve our meal. Why work if others get free? Thank you, Hendrik. Says, I'm on point. If you get 500 and you're lazy, it stays at that. But if you work and earn and get UBI, can be construed as pushing people to want to earn more. UBI being the unemployment grant. Yeah, I got you. It's not really a grant. That's a return on your labor. See, here in the U.S., for unemployment, our employer and the employee must pay insurance. So if the employer pays the insurance for your job to the unemployment insurance fund, it's money that goes into an actual fund. And then if the employer didn't have to pay that, your salary could potentially be higher. So that is part of your remuneration is the unemployment insurance goes in there so that if you find yourself unemployed, you're able to draw money out of that. Now, that used to be limited based on how much money was put in, how many weeks you'd be eligible for it. But the Obama administration, in its socialist bent, disrupted that system and made it possible for people to collect unemployment for 5 years. And so people didn't go back to work. They got handouts. And how do we fund it? By printing money. Quantitative easing, flooding the money supply with fictitious money which undermine our currency. Had we not had the abuse of the dollar during the Obama years, then we would have seen the euro collapse when Greece, Italy, Spain, Portugal, and Ireland went tango uniform or teats up. The euro would have collapsed. But the euro didn't collapse because the only global currencies these days are the dollar and the euro. It's no longer the dollar, the euro, the pound, the yen, and the Deutsche Mark. It is now simply, I know it used to be the Swiss franc to some degree. It's the dollar and the euro. That's the 2 international currencies that people trade in, that they have reserves in, that they focus on, that they do bond issues on for the most part, that are freely traded anywhere in the world. The euro would have collapsed if we had not mismanaged our currency. So the Europeans can thank their lucky stars that we had morons like the Obama administration running our policy, and frankly, to that degree, the end of the Bush administration with their policies. You can thank them for saving the euro. Otherwise, your currency would have collapsed had it not been for the mismanagement, because people would have fled the euro en masse to go to the dollar when that happened. But they didn't, because the dollar was just as shaky as the euro was. So there you go. True, the creature from Jekyll Island, a.k.a. the Federal Reserve Bank. Yeah, here you go. That's a good one. Lions reached the finals, but have not won yet. Okay, so then I was right. Yeah. Anyway, that was my recollection, guys. I didn't go look it up. Daddy, you've been quiet there for a bit since I answered your question. Daddy Malhamochi says, I agree with you. People should work and earn the living. They're failing to pay UF workers. Yeah. Well, that's true. There you go. So there's the problem. You know why they're failing to pay? Because there's no money. The ANC has stolen or mismanaged it all. Undermine confidence in the South African economy. Who wants to invest in a country in which the government threatens to expropriate your property? Not your land. That's not the argument, ladies and gentlemen. Section 25 of the South African Constitution allows for expropriation of any property, and it specifically states any property, not just land, with compensation. If that is revoked by constitutional amendment, it will be without compensation. And the moment that happens, here goes your pension funds. There goes your savings. Here comes the man to take away your bakkie or your SUV or your jewelry. You think I'm kidding? We've seen it before from leftist states that do this to people. And all South Africans should be concerned because it's not simply about stealing and pilfering and achieving economic parity or income equality. No, it's not about that. It's about political power. Drunk on political power. Because whatever the government of the day is in South Africa, if that becomes the law of the land, that government of the day will use the threat of expropriation without compensation to silence its critics. Whether it's the African National Congress, the Congress of the People, that's never going to happen. EFF, that's never going to happen. The DA, they could become the power someday, but they would just as likely abuse it. The government of the day will threaten you with expropriation or simply take your resources to get you to be silent so that you don't speak out about their abuses and their corruption. Could you imagine if expropriation without compensation had been the law of the land since 1994? There would be no free press in South Africa. As it is now, the press is pretty much in the tank for the ANC, but they would have been in the tank for the ANC for years. Instead of being serious investigative journalism going on the last 2 decades in South Africa, we wouldn't have seen that. And we wouldn't know about Nkandla, and we wouldn't know about the arms deal, and we wouldn't know about Oilgate, and we wouldn't know about Travelgate, and we wouldn't know about, the list goes on now. We wouldn't know about the Guptas, we wouldn't know about any of that stuff if it wasn't for investigative journalism. And all of that will go away if expropriation without compensation is the law of the land. You folks should be terrified. I'm terrified at developments in this country. But in South Africa, you should be truly terrified that the African National Congress actually goes forward with this plan because it will be used to abuse everyone. And when I say you folks, I'm talking about Zulu, Xhosa, Ndebele, Swana, Basotho, Afrikaners, English speakers, Portuguese, German speakers, all South Africans, coloreds, all South Africans. You should be fearful of the African National Congress's attempt to amend the Constitution. It's about political power. Yes, it's also about self-enrichment and self-aggrandizement and pilfering. But the main reason is about power because with that threat, you control everything. No one dares speak their mind or speak up against your tyranny. And that's what happens, ladies and gentlemen. It's coming. Yeah, 10 million rand for those stupid bicycles that can't be used. New party's not the DA. Hendo doesn't like the DA. Gotcha. The we're a nation built on urbanization of hope and the stay of our children. What? Freedom Front Plus will work. Jack van de Westhuizen. Okay. Purple Cow. Yeah, but the Purple Cow got 15,000 votes in 2019, folks. I like their ideas. They're interesting, but they need to get a little more traction than that. But that wasn't short notice, so there you go. Yep. Transvaal won Super 10. Yeah, but Super 10 wasn't really the Super Rugby, was it? Because Super 12 was when it really started. Or was it Super 10? I mean, that's kind of a gray area, so you might be right about that. S.J. Wheeler is not letting go of other people winning that event. Yeah, but 1993, that wasn't professional rugby. The era of professional rugby started after the 95 World Cup. That's when the International Rugby Board agreed to professional rugby. And 1996 is when Super Rugby took off. So I don't think that counts for the Transvaal. Just saying. Okay, Tian says Freedom Front Plus will never get a majority. A new party will need more than 3 years to get numbers. That's true. So you all have to make a decision. If you oppose the ANC, what do you do? Well, my recommendation is vote for an opposition party. A lot of people would say that's the DA. it's your call. But you have to unseat the ANC in 2021 in municipal elections, spank them so that an opposition party gets a majority. And the only realistic outcome is that the DA, I'm not shilling for the DA. I'm just telling you the reality, folks. The DA can win Cape Town, Nelson Mandela Bay outright. Last time they got 9,000 fewer votes in 2016 than they had in 2011, and they got 45% of the electorate, which was the largest percentage ever got in Nelson Mandela Bay to my recollection. If they got 9,000 more votes, they would have won an outright majority of 51%, and then they would never have had to form a coalition with EFF and these other minor parties, which led to all the fractious governance in Nelson Mandela Bay. Cape Town, win it outright, shouldn't be a problem. Nelson Mandela Bay, they should win it outright. Johannesburg, Tshwane, both of those are within grasp for the Democratic Alliance to capture. People are so hotful of the ANC. They've had enough. It's time to send them packing. And so as a consequence, I think it's very likely that the Democratic Alliance can win outright majorities in those metropolitan areas. They don't have a prayer in Bloemfontein or in Durban, which are ANC strongholds. Even with people pissed off, they'll vote against themselves and vote for the ANC just because they're so strong. I mean, they get like 70, 80% of the vote in those towns. So that's not going to change. They might drop down closer to 50%, but they're not going to lose those towns. But they will lose the others if people vote for the DA. If the DA gets in power in those municipalities, my recommendation to John Steenhuisen, if he stays the permanent leader of the party and anyone else in the party, is that you immediately turn to the Freedom Front Plus, COPE, UDM, and you say, listen, if they won seats, we have control of Nelson Mandela Bay, of Tshwane, Pretoria, Johannesburg, and Cape Town. Would you like to join our coalition? We want to form a ruling coalition of parties in opposition to the ANC. And make them an even smaller voice. Welcome them in. And then the moment that one of these coalition partners wants to do something that's illegal, untoward, or is difficult in governance, okay, thank you. Appreciate you being part of the team, but time for you to take off. You're going to be replaced by somebody from the bench. And as long as you have a majority, you can do that. And that's the secret. That's the secret. But you must win an outright majority. You cannot be beholden to a coalition partner. You hear people all over South Africa saying the future of South African politics is coalition governance. It's not. Coalition governance is fractious. The EFF does not have the same worldview that the Democratic Alliance has, yet you found them in coalition in two metros just to keep the ANC out of office. That is not a recipe for success. Outright majority, then ally with other parties so that they get experience on the council and you can work with them and have common goals. And you can reduce the importance of the corrupt, fossilized ANC, which has gone from a party interested in liberation to one of self-enrichment, self-aggrandizement. That's what's happening with the ANC. And so that's what you have to do, ladies and gentlemen, provided the 2021 municipal elections take place. There's an effort, consideration by the EFF and ANC teaming up illegally to defer these elections. That better not happen. Better not happen. The Bruce says, I love your first worldview. I think that's not a compliment, but maybe a dig because, well, you just don't get it. It's not like that, man. If I'm wrong, Bruce, tell me I'm wrong. But I think that's what you're trying to tell me. Yeah. There are lots of people in South Africa, conspiracy theories. The Independent Electoral Commission is not independent, that the whole thing was fixed in 94. It's been fixed ever since then. I don't buy that. I know people who are election observers who've been involved in it, and while they didn't have the entire view of everything, they've participated in multiple elections in South Africa, and that's not been a widespread problem. Certainly not like it is in places like, say, Philadelphia or Chicago. Anyway, did I say that out loud? S.J. Wheeler hopes the DA never comes to power. Well, who do you want to be in power then, S.J. Wheeler? Who? Oh, that's what Tion says. So who? Biden will never win. I hope not. Oh, gosh. It's chat. Okay. Hendrik asked me, what do I think of Cape Independence? I think it's an interesting idea. DA will struggle with a white leader. I disagree, Tion. Helen Zille was an amazing leader. She built this party into a powerhouse that kind of floundered under Musi Maimane, unfortunately. So the Lions won because of apartheid. Martin Van Buren says. That's funny, actually. Karen says, I'm afraid I don't see a way out either. We're going to go the same way as Rhodesia. I would hope not. We've been a communist state. Social justice, DACP, not much better. Oh, no, you're not saying social. You're saying S.J. Wheeler. With the next elections, people should change their votes for new party. The ruling party has failed. So, yeah, I agree. I agree, Daddy. The fact that 10.5 million people voted for the ANC in 2019 is mind-boggling. It just shows the ability for people to buy votes by handing out T-shirts and food parcels and making promises, and identity politics. That's why the ANC. That's why you see a president of South Africa making racist statements and making this utter nonsense. It's the nature of white people to be racist, and that's why we have domestic abuse. That you see that because he thinks, and his party thinks, that that's the path. By demonizing white South Africans, they forget that white South Africans vote for the ANC. You're going to lose white South Africans who voted for the ANC, except for the Liberation era stalwarts, who owe their fortunes to success to their dirty connections within the party. But legitimate white South Africans who vote for the ANC based on what they thought was a legitimate party are going to start going, wait a second. My son can't get a job. My daughter had to take an entrance exam to go to an MBA program, but all the other people in her class didn't take it. That's not fair. And now I'm being called a racist. They're going to lose the white votes that they have. Not just the white, but black and colored votes too. It's going to happen. What's that, Danny? Okay. Yeah. S.J. Wheeler, do you mind sharing why you're so angry with the DA? I'm not shilling for them. I'm just curious. I mean, look, I get it. The DA from 2017 to 2019, I was very critical of the DA. I went after them full bore on LinkedIn. You go back if you have the time to sort through news articles that I posted and wrote commentary on. I was vicious to the DA, but they deserved it. They lost the plot. They were advocating and espousing policies that were simply the same thing the ANC was doing. And they didn't care about the country, in my view. They cared about gaining strength. And that's not the approach. You need to take care of people, not just be cynical, which is what I thought they were. Musi Maimani, nothing against him personally, but he lost the plot and really doesn't know what he's doing. And his new South Africa thing is a joke. We'll see if it goes anywhere. DA rules in Meyerton, and it's well-run, clean town. The EFF and ANC can't stand. They toy regularly to close off R59 and pelt cars with rocks to hurt the DA. Yep. As long as the Sharks can move to Cape Town. Oh, that's the Cape Province. Yeah, I'm going to get back to the Cape Independence. Let me just get through the comments here. Neither, after they messed up, Pretoria even more. Whites who vote ANC only do it in hope of being awarded Lucas contenders. No, not just that, Morton. There are people who still are from the 80s and 90s and before that who are eligible to vote in South Africa who were loyal ANC supporters or who supported the ANC out of the gate. There are, for various reasons. There are not many, but there's even a few white folks that vote for the EFF. Shockingly, a few votes. Okay, so the question was about, I lost track. What was the question again? The question was, what was that question a moment ago I was asked? Gosh, I'm sorry. Cape Independence. Hendrik de Klerk asked me about Cape Independence. All right, let me cover that really quick before we close out the stream here. So Cape Independence. All right, here's the deal. I had Phil Craig on my channel. I interviewed him a few weeks back talking about the Cape Independence, whatever they're called, advocacy group. He was on here and we talked about the Cape Independence. And he makes a legitimate argument. He puts it forth that the Cape can declare independence. There's nothing in the South African Constitution that can prevent it. But I've seen an effort to secede from a country before. In this country, we had a civil war, a bloody civil war. There was no mention of it in our Constitution either. But states tried to secede. And Lincoln went to war to keep them in the Union and to end slavery, those two events. So we've seen a bloody civil war here. We've seen it in other places. We've also seen instances in which countries divorce. Czechoslovakia became the Czech Republic and the Slovak Republic. Now, famously today, it's no longer the Czech Republic. It's called Czechia, which is confusing because Czechia is like saying Chechnya in the Caucasus Mountains, so it's very confusing. But Czechoslovakia broke into Czech and Slovak republics, constituent pieces. The Baltic states left the former Soviet Union and became independent countries without a conflict, although it was tension-filled, and others. Catalonia is an independent secession movement that has not gone well, and there's other instances of it. Biafra was a nasty war. We've also seen Eritrea break away from Ethiopia. That was successful. We've seen South Sudan leave Sudan, but that was after a 4-decade civil war. And we've seen Western Morocco being recognized by states in Africa, even though it's not a legitimate country because it's part of Morocco. And so that's still up in the air. So the Cape secession is interesting. Can the Cape survive on its own economically, politically? It could. It's feasible for the Western Cape to do that. Is it wise? I don't know if it's wise. Will the ANC allow it to happen? I don't think they'll ever allow it to happen. I think that's a real concern here. But people make the wrong assumptions about the Cape independence movement, and they think this is some sort of white thing. only 17% of the population of the Western Cape is white, ladies and gentlemen, in case you don't know that. I'm sure many people in South Africa do know that, but only 17%. So it's not about white and black and brown. In fact, the majority of the population is brown, 50, 55. Well, now I see the numbers are 59 because of mass influx of people coming in from the Eastern Cape who are black, but around 50% of the Western Cape's population is colored or mixed race. But the majority of the Western Cape's population speaks Afrikaans as a first language. That is an important distinction. So it's a cultural entity. And so from a language standpoint. So there's arguments for it, there's arguments against it. I don't know it's the wisest thing to do. Maybe it's good to make noise about it, to maybe wake the ANC up and start a process to get them to get their act together. But I think the hope for South Africa is that the ANC's malgovernance, its malfeasance, and its capricious rule under COVID-19 with the undemocratic, unelected, unaccountable National Coronavirus Command Council. Boy, I say that in one breath, don't I now? It's pretty cool, huh? And all its ridiculous decisions like no open-toed shoes because people get COVID from their big toe, right? No e-commerce because people get COVID from not going to shopping stores to meet their basic needs and having it delivered to the post. Not. No tobacco. Well, for whatever reason. A presumption is that it's a respiratory disease, but that is not proven scientifically that cigarettes hurt. In fact, there are studies in France and elsewhere that indicate that smokers actually have an advantage. They don't know why, but I'm not advocating for it. Tobacco ban, alcohol ban. All because the government lied to South Africans and says we need time to get the hospital beds ready. And they did. Then they eased restrictions. And then there's a surge. And then after the surge, we knew this was coming. Our experts told us 3 months ago, why didn't you tell the public about this? And if you knew a surge was coming, why would you let people congregate and mingle? Why would you do that? They lie on a daily basis because they have no idea what they're doing. And so the Western Cape, I don't know. It's I don't know where I'm at on it. It's interesting to talk about. It's one of those things I think won't happen. We'll see. Did S.J. Wheeler ever tell us what he's angry or she's angry about? KZN will need to secede first before the Western Cape. KZN is not going to secede because the Inkatha Freedom Party is feckless. They're useless. They suffered a mortal blow in the build-up to the 94 elections. They've never recovered from it. They just won a lot of seats the first time around just because, but they've continually declined as a party. Mangosuthu Buthelezi is 1,000 years old now. His influence is declined. The king of the Zulu people is not particularly influential. KZN would only break away if there was a rebirth of the Inkatha Freedom Party. But when Jacob Zuma became president, too many people left Inkatha to vote for the ANC, and they haven't gone back. They either don't vote. Biafra, South Sudan, Katanga, all bad stuff. Yeah, bad stuff. I don't know if Erica's still here, but Erica may have left now. Erica was from Katanga. She grew up in Katanga and actually knew Moses Shombe, the breakaway prime minister from Katanga when it was independent. Yep. Daddy says, our president promised that all the people that stole from the government will be in jail, but none of them in court. Yeah, don't hold your breath, Daddy. We got lots of criminals in this country who abused the government and violated civil rights and our Constitution. None of them are in jail. It's really, really sad. Jack van der Westhuizen, only our living God can save South Africa. Well, I hope people can save South Africa. God doesn't seem to be in a hurry to save anybody. The rapture is a ways off. DA just over a year that was visible. Oh, yeah. Liaison is in Nelson Mandela Bay, Port Elizabeth. In fact, despite the fractious governance because of betrayal from the economic freedom fighters and other minor parties that allied with the Democratic Alliance, under Athol Trollop as the mayor of Nelson Mandela Bay, significant improvements. Trash was picked up, parks were clean, services were delivered in just a short period of time. But it's all gone to crap because the ANC is in charge now. Toon says, I say someone adopts or marries the colonel, get him start a sack cock party and push. Well, thank you, Toons. I appreciate that. S.J. Wheeler says, DA is not that great, just ratepayers. Erica's still here. Good to see you. They get 25,000 hospitals ready and 100,000 graves for 300,000 deaths. We'll see. 4,000 have died. S.J. Wheeler's a dude. I didn't know S.J. Wheeler. Actually, I've forgotten. We were talking before, so but I didn't recall if you're a dude. Well, thank you for sharing that. I'll try to remember that. Erica's still here. She's telling me that. Brew. It's a Friday night, so I guess we've gone a little bit longer. People are hanging around. They must be enjoying the conversation. President Chris. Well, thank you for that. Ja, Hendrik is nog hier. Yes, it's night. Lezan says, like I said, the DA are not perfect. They work within stringent guidelines. Fair point, Lezan. What happened to rates under Athol Trollope? Yeah, what was the case of rates, Tian, or of Lezan? I will say that Athol Trollope was one of my favorite mayors. My all-time favorite mayor in South Africa was Helen Zille when she was the mayor of Cape Town. She was amazing. Absolutely. So has anybody heard an update on Alan Windy? What's his status? He contracted COVID-19. I haven't heard any news updates on how he's doing. I hope he's doing well. Destroying the West. Patrick Vianello says, just a correction here. After 2016 with Trollope, the EFF weren't in the super coalition. They worked with the DA and Gilbert. Okay. I implied incorrectly. I wasn't stating they were. The EFF worked against the DA the entire time. They were not in the coalition. The DA got two minor parties, and then one defected, so they only have 59 seats. They had to get another party that had one seat. They got them back to 60 so they could rule. Yeah, or 60, 61, yeah. No, if that came across as I was implying that the EFF was in the coalition, no, that was not my intent. And no, I know that's not the case. So thank you, Patrick, for clarifying that in case people misunderstood from the way I said it. Yeah. No, what I said is that the EFF worked against, and I think maybe I did say they were in the coalition, so I apologize for that if I did. That was not my intent. The EFF worked against the coalition. In fact, with the national leader, Julius Malema, going so far as saying we will cut the throat of whiteness in Nelson Mandela Bay to get rid of Athol Trollope, because his great sin to serve as mayor was that he was white. Now, how is that not racist? How is that not hate speech? How is that not prosecuted under existing South African law, which doesn't allow for that sort of thing? Not to mention inciting violence. We will cut the throat of whiteness. That's disgraceful. Anyway, thank you for that, Patrick, for the clarification. My apologies if I misled people. It wasn't intentional. Eric has been very quiet, listening in the background. That's fine, Eric. Nothing wrong with that. IFP, like we discussed this morning, will be our biggest ally. Okay? Federalism. And we have federalism here, and it works, but it's under threat when you have people that don't do their job and you have no recourse. Yeah, Tian, use secession as a threat to get federalism. Maybe that's what some people have in mind in the Western Cape. We'll see. What I don't like about the DA is it's infested with old progs, PFP, NRP, and runaway nets. None are my friends. Okay, that's fair. But if you go out and recruit young people to your political party, you change the character of your party by bringing people who aren't any of those things in, and you can change a party over time. I would say the DA is very different now than the DA of 2001, 2002, in its early days. Lezan says, Yanni Breed just subscribed. Well, thank you, Yanni, so much for subscribing to Chris White Africa. Really grateful for that. My rates didn't go up that much, but our area was rated fairly to start with, but I really don't mind paying more when I can see service delivery improving. But currently I pay rates to have, you're paying rates now and you're not getting any service. So it doesn't matter what you pay if you're not getting service. Tiana says, that's my exact point for the DA in Pretoria. How do you go into coalition with the EFF? Well, the DA made a decision that it was more important to keep the ANC out of governance in Pretoria than to worry about going to coalition with the EFF. And of course, they were not a good coalition partner. Yeah, so good point. But you got to win outright majority, folks. And the party best positioned in those metros, Christian Leclésio, that's an interesting surname, Leclésio. Christian, thank you for becoming a subscriber to the channel. You, when you enter into that devil's deal, then you have to deal with the consequences of it. But I understand why they did it, and I get it. I also understand why they entered into this coalition with these fractious smaller parties in Nelson Mandela Bay. But, yeah. So go win the majority outright. If the DA had won 9,000 more votes, which is what they had in the previous election, then they would have won Nelson Mandela Bay outright, and they would not have needed a coalition. So that's the DA's fault. They didn't do the hard work on the ground to get people. If you had 9,000 votes before, how did you lose 9,000? Was the turnout lower? If the turnout's lower, then that's the fault of the political parties for not getting their base out and recruiting new members. I'm not saying the DA had to do something more than they ever did before. They had to just maintain the number they had previously. They would have won the city outright because support for the ANC cratered in that election because of service delivery and corruption. Nelson Mandela Bay had so many problems with service delivery and does again. So there you go. If you become self-sufficient, Government doesn't really matter. Well, LeBrew, I disagree with that. National defense, foreign policy, national standards. I get your point, what you're getting at. Put your own solar photovoltaic panels in, provide yourself for sewage through septic tanks or whatever, and basic resources. I get where you're coming at, but government should be accountable to the people. The ANC is not accountable to anyone, and that's part of the problem. DA needs to start now with strong moral candidates. Yeah, Tiana, this is exactly what I said. I've been saying this. Those pay attention to my channel know that I say repeatedly what the opposition parties, not just the DA, need to be doing is right now. They need to be campaigning today. And not campaigning complaining about the ANC, but campaigning. I mean, this. If I was a political candidate right now, I would tell you that I am for commerce to be open. You want to buy hot chicken takeaway? You can buy hot chicken takeaway. My government will set the hygiene standards and safety standards so that your risk of contracting this virus is reduced dramatically. But you can go buy your hot chicken. I'm for e-commerce. I'm for traditional commerce. If you want to smoke in this country, you can buy cigarettes legitimately under my government. If you want alcohol, I ask you drink responsibly. If you don't drink responsibly, you're going to wind up in a drunk tank or a prison cell. It's as simple as that. That's what you campaign on. You campaign and show the contrary. And that's not even hard. That's easy. That's a given win. Because of the ANC's ridiculous behavior, you win right there. Then you build on that. Well, you already have it, but you build off those points. And you talk about, I'm for fixing schools. What do I mean by fixing schools? Well, it's shameful that students in the Eastern Cape don't get textbooks because of criminal BE. So guess what? Black economic empowerment is a racist legislation that must be eliminated because it retards the growth of all South Africans. The Tourism Relief Fund is a shameful, disgraceful racial decision to exclude minority-owned businesses, whites, Indians, and colors, from not getting relief in the Tourism Relief Fund. First off, the bulk of businesses in the tourism sector are minority-owned businesses for historical reasons and also because it takes a lot of capital. And other groups didn't have the capital necessarily. The government didn't make it available. The next point is that 2/3 of employees in the average minority-owned business are Black South Africans. So when you allow these businesses to fail, assuming that the majority business will be able to swoop in and take that up, it doesn't work that simple, and grow their business. If you have an incompetent inept business, not all majority-owned businesses are, I'm not implying that, but you have an incompetent inept business, it's not going to grow because someone else failed. They'll expand and they'll fail on a greater scale. But when you deny resources, you're hurting Black South Africans. This is the message you need to get out. That's what you need to do. And it needs to be done now, not 30 days, 60 days, 90 days before an election. Today, you need to be on the universities. And who was it I was talking to that was Willem Petzer was disagreeing with me when I had him on my channel. He said, I've been on the campuses, Colonel Wyatt. You know, those people are all leftists. You're not going to change that. Yeah, I'm not talking about the campuses. You can do that as well. But you need to be in townships, in Kaisheta, in Alexandria. You need to be in the countryside in Northwest, in the Northern Cape, in the Free State. We're out on farms, out on vineyards, out on cattle posts, talking to people all the time. You need to resonate with people who will vote. You need to encourage people to go back and vote. Help people get registered to vote, hopefully to support your party and your ideas. There are people who are lost you will never change. They are racist in their heart. People like Julius Malema will never change. He's a race merchant. And apparently it seems that Cyril Ramaphosa is falling into the same boat. Whether he was there or not, I'm not going to call him a racist, but I'm going to say what he says is racist and racial, and it's intentionally meant for political purposes to divide people. Some people you're never going to get back, but there are young South Africans. And there are also South Africans that are hot full. I call them the hot full of South Africans who've had enough of this nonsense. You don't have to complain about the ANC. The ANC has exposed its bare backside. Ladies and gentlemen, this is the ANC. You thought I was going to pull my pants down, didn't you? You thought I was going to pull my pants down and expose my bum. No, I'm not. This is a PG program. Now, what I'm saying is that they have exposed their backside. The emperor has no clothes. People know that the National Coronavirus Command Council is clueless, and the ANC is feckless. They'll always get votes. Joe Biden's getting votes. The guy he's got dementia or he's comatose, and he's going to get votes. Millions of people will vote for Joe Biden. They'll throw away their votes. The ANC will always give votes, but you can win. You can win. You can defeat the ANC and send a strong message. There are talented, dedicated, patriotic people in the ANC. Less and less every day, it seems, but they are there. But there are lots of talented South Africans. You look at the people like Big Daddy Liberty, Onatokwaza, and many, many other South Africans who are colored, who are black, who are Indian. And they've had enough of this. I've talked about my friend who's a South African, who's Indian, married to an Afrikaner, and his business has gone under because of the ANC's restrictions. You think he would ever vote for the ANC? No way. Or any of the 18 black employees that used to work for his business. They're not going to vote for the ANC if they bother to vote. So go steal those voters from the ANC legitimately by telling them your ideas, sharing with them the right way to do things. Now that you have parties in the country that have the plot, they know where to go. Anyway, so that's just kind of what I'm saying about it, guys. Let me catch up here. Alan Windy is tweeting he was advised diabetics to take precautions yesterday, so I hope he's okay. Yeah, okay, good to hear he's still kicking there. Freedom Front Plus has promised he did well in the last votes. Yeah, Daddy, the reason that I attribute the success of Freedom Front Plus in the last election had more to do with anger over the DA, which had lost the plot, so a lot of DA supporters fled to it, and also expropriation without compensation conversation. A lot of people who were in the farms and had businesses who were concerned about expropriation fled to the Freedom Front Plus. Freedom Front Plus, I'm not speaking ill of it. I'm trying to get Peter Groenewald on my channel as a guest. I don't want to speak ill of them because I have nothing against them. But at this point, they're just a fringe party. They're just a small number. They did very well last time, but unless they get up to 10%, they're not really a factor in the elections. Unless someone needs their 5% to form coalition, but they don't even have 5%. So they have a long way to go to be a serious candidate, but they're not going to get there in 2021 or 2023. The only viable option as a party, if you want a party to be in power, is the DA, whether you like them or not. Leison says, my one friend is campaigning for Freedom Front Plus in our area. Their politics, not mine, but they deliver services. Of course, I'll vote for them. People think illogically when it comes to politics. They do. People vote against their own self-interest because of crazy reasons. Tian tells Leison they do well in Pretoria due to large Afrikaans base and do perform in council. That's true. That is true. Got a lot of votes because people were hurtful of the DA. Well, there you go, Hendrik. You answered. That's part of what I said. He's going to call it racist. Okay, cool. No mooning channel. He should all join forces and take on those in lockstep support the hoax of the century. There you go. Teresa Smuts. Hey, Teresa. Good to see you there. Morton says no CCC, but the Politburo. Okay. Freedom Front Plus need to change their approach to campaigning. They're missing a large group of voters in the young centrist. I would agree, Leison. And so when it comes to Freedom Front Plus, and again, I'm not shilling for them, just like I wasn't shilling for the DA, but in the build-up to the 2019 elections, because the Freedom Front Plus has had this stereotype applied to them that they're racist and they're apartheid apologist and they're bigots and all that. No, I'm not calling them that. That's a stereotype that's been out there and said about them for years. Because of that, and of course, remember the party was founded by Constantine Villiers, the general who was opposed. Anyway, but I'm not speaking ill of him. I'm just saying that's a reputation they had. I took a close look at their party platform. No, I don't say manifesto. That's something that communists say, and I detest communists. I'm not a communist. I'm a free market capitalist who believes in Western liberal ideals and free market capitalism and liberty. Anyway, I read their manifesto. Oh, I said it, didn't I? No, I read their party platform in 2019, and there was very little that I found objectionable in that party platform. But the problem is that the Freedom Front Plus needs to do, as Leison says, learn how to campaign and learn how to draw the centrist in, because a lot of their views are very much centrist, and people don't think they are. They think they're right-wing. Maybe they are right-wing, but their platform in 2019 was predominantly a centrist position, and they could have done even better. So I agree with Leison. That's what they need to do. So you guys disagree? Let me know. Laugh of the century. Trump wins, or the direction was set in 65. It's been running fumes since then. Gina says, will Southern artificial intelligence computer with no racial biases program with positive ideals? Yeah, okay. We've seen computers run societies. I watched Logan's Run. They killed people when they turned 30. The problem with the DA is taking their battle against the ANC like the IFP was in a battle against apartheid, trying to be diplomatic. Yeah, no, they are trying to be diplomatic. It's the problem. And also this over-reliance on the courts. The courts are fine to challenge what the government does, but you really need to go build your base. You need to turn out the vote. You need to get people with you. Why are people not approaching political parties, South Africans like Big Daddy Liberty? Why are they not approaching them? If they are, they're not letting us know about it. They need to do that. Teresa Smith says the police were stopping folks walking to Matsapulamalela, telling them to wear masks. My daughters were also maskless, and the ladies told them to also tell Umgulunga. Yeah. They say dogs get more information from sniffing one of his backsides in South Africa. Well, there you go. I was offering information to the ANC when I stood up. That's what I was doing. I didn't realize that's what I was doing. Sean says, I didn't even hear Sean. If the Bilderberg attendees wanted the ANC gone, they would be gone. Political assassinations would intensify and it would break into pieces. They would pump money into opposition groups. Tian says, I think the Freedom Front Plus will grow now that they're heard and taken a bit more, but they're not taken seriously in Parliament, Tian. Look, I'm sorry that they're not, and they're also not taken seriously in the press. You read about the Liberty Fighters, you read about Solidarity, you read about the DA, lots of groups holding court cases. The Freedom Front Plus had court cases, but virtually no press coverage. I haven't seen Peter Groenewald anywhere except on Loving Life. I haven't seen him anywhere. And the guy's working 100 hours a day, but the results aren't out there. And why is he the only person in the party that we know about? We can mention a few dozen members of the Democratic Alliance off the top of our heads, even for people who aren't South Africans. But the only person we know in the Freedom Front Plus is Peter Groenewald. That's it. They've got some work to do. Jack says, there'll never be apartheid again in South Africa. Yeah, there is apartheid in South Africa. That's right. That's right. There is. There's racial segregation going on now. There is denial of equal opportunity in government employment, government tenders, access to higher education, the Tourism Relief Fund. That's apartheid. That's separate. Listen, that's discriminatory and it's unfair. It's going on now. And the ANC is the architect of it. They are establishing a political system using the rule of law to discriminate based on race. Where have I seen that movie before? Let me think about that for a second. Yeah, that's right, ladies and gentlemen. Yanni, what's my point? Thank you. I said a bunch of stuff about Freedom Front Plus. Yanni, please tell me what point you never thought about it. Please share that with me so I make sure that we got that. S.J. Wheeler says, the DA are like the Stormers. They promise a lot, but never really. Oh, that's just mean. That's just me. What's that movie with Mel Gibson? Payback. You ever see that Payback? And he goes in, and the guy's got it holding up his suitcases are made out of alligator skin, and he shoots his suitcase, and he goes, "That's just mean. That's just mean. He shot my suitcase. That's alligator skin. That's just mean." After he shot his two deputies, he shoots and kills them. Then he doesn't care about them being shot, but he shoots his briefcase. And he's like, "That's just mean." That's James Coburn, who was the actor. He said that to Mel Gibson. Come on, S.J. Wheeler. That's just mean, man. Quit picking on the Stormers in the Western Province. Lazan says, I think Big Daddy Liberty is doing the right thing, not affiliating with political party for now. Let him spread his word. No. Lazan, I'm not asking anybody to go out and get Big Daddy Liberty. Let Big Daddy Liberty do his thing. My saying is that Big Daddy Liberty thinks correctly. He's got a good head on his shoulders. He's black. He's Jewish, too. I'm trying to figure that one out. He's a Jewish Zulu. That one's a new one on me. But there are tens, hundreds of thousands of black South Africans who feel the same way. But they're silent. We don't hear their voices. Some of them wouldn't mind having a voice. Instead of getting people who are political opportunists like Herman Mashaba and Musi Maimane, who go to the DA, and Patricia DeLille, who go to the DA for access and political power for self-aggrandizement and their egos, how about getting people that actually care about the country who are black and colored to come into the party and have bigger voices? Now, the DA does have colored voices in it and a few black voices. My point is that opposition parties, the Freedom Front Plus, why isn't the Freedom Front Plus out recruiting coloreds in South Africa? Are they? If they are, I don't know about it. No one talks about it. It's not on their website. But why aren't they? It's a natural constituency for them. What language do coloreds in South Africa by and large speak? Afrikaans. That's right. They have a cultural heritage with most Afrikaners. And the Freedom Front Plus, let's be honest, is overwhelmingly Afrikaans based. So why are they not actively recruiting rural Afrikaans-speaking colors to their party to swing the vote in their favor? In the Northern Cape, in Northwest, where there's plenty of coloreds who speak Afrikaans, Now, I'm not saying that's a basis that they go, but if you sell your ideas to people who have a natural cultural affinity with you, you can go from there. But I'm not seeing it. Like a party of one. Yeah. Okay, Jan. Yeah. Peter Groenewald. That's it. Come on. Somebody. Give me a name of someone else in the Freedom Front Plus. Go ahead. Now, probably somebody's going to go, they're going to mention their member of parliament because they know him. But come on. S.J. Wheeler says, Big Daddy Labor to get my vote. Well, he'd certainly get my attention. He might get my vote too. You're a Bulls supporter. That's okay. Listen, S.J. Wheeler, the Bulls were awesome for a few years there. And Brian Habana played there. And then, of course, who's the big lock? Thinking of him right now. Anyway, drawing a blank. But lots of talented Springboks have played for the Bulls. I like Loftus, although it needs an upgrade. It's kind of shown its age. And I love Pretoria, so I'm okay with the Bulls. I wear Bulls jerseys on here, but the Stormers come first. Western Province first. BEE is apartheid. Thank you, Benjamin. That's what I'm trying to say. It's another version of it. It's exactly what it is. And the world is just ignoring it. They didn't ignore apartheid. They did for a while, but eventually they'll come around. Corne Mulder. Okay, there you go, Tian. That is a name I do know. Thank you. There's a second one. But look, it took somebody, but Tian is a member of the Freedom Front Plus. He's not admitting it, but I know he is. I can tell. Anyway, thank you. Hendo says Peter Murray was doing some of that for Freedom Front Plus. Okay. Let me see. BDL is absolutely mind-blowing. He speaks such truth with passion and pride for South African people. Absolutely. Okay. All right. Bucky's both. Oh, no, Bucky's both. Yeah, that's not who I was thinking of, though. Victor Matfield is who I was thinking of. Victor Matfield. He played for the Bulls, right? Bucky's Botha did play for the Bulls. Absolutely. Yep. Really talented. Matt Bucky's Botha is a huge individual. He is huge. Oh, my gosh. So is Victor Matfield. That guy is just tall, man. Where did your love for rugby start? Christian, okay, what I'm going to do is I'm going to end the stream with my story about how I got into rugby because people are coming back. People are leaving the stream. I thought maybe it's time to end. It is Friday night. I'm not in a rush. So, okay, I'll tell you about the story for rugby. Let me get a drink here real quick. Thank you, Christian. Christian, were you here once before or are you new? I don't recall. I think I might have seen your name before. I think I made a comment like the Creel. When I think of Creel, I think of Jesse Creel. Yeah, what is Baki's Botha? I know his first name, but I can't think of it right now. So rugby. I was a freshman at Ohio University in 1982, and if anyone says I wasn't born yet, you're banned from the stream. No, I'm just kidding. He was a great player, and he's a great guy too. Really nice Bucky's. Really like him, and he's got a cool name. I like guys like Quagga Smith and Bucky's Botha. These are great names, great nicknames anyway. So I was a freshman at university. I was taking ROTC classes for the credit and also to see if I was interested in coming in as an officer. And one of the upperclassmen, we had labs every Friday. We'd go do weapons qualification, range familiarization, land navigation, leadership training, drill and ceremony. Do it every Friday. We'd have this. So most college students were already out, eating pizza and drinking Friday afternoon. I was in ROTC classes along with other folks. And this one Friday, this upperclassman who was a black guy said to me, "Hey, you coming to the game tonight?" And I'm like, the game's tomorrow. He goes, "No, not football." I'm talking about American football. Not football. We're talking about rugby. I'm like, "Man, I'm from Appalachia. I've heard of rugby, but we don't play rugby." He's like, come on. It'll be great. You'll love it. You'll meet people. And so I went. And I got down there and I stood on the side of the rugby pitch and I kind of watched the game. There were no stands. We're just standing at this parade field and that's where they put the lines out there. Practice fields back and forth. And I didn't really understand what was going on, but I'm like, okay, it's not football. It's not soccer. It's not Australian rules football. It's kind of cool, though. And I didn't really understand it. And then that was my introduction to it. And there's more to the story. That's not PG. Anyway, so more to the story. But I'll sum it up there and say that I found it fascinating. And then I finished my year at university and I went into the Army. And I developed this interest in rugby in the early 80s. And so I said that I want to follow a national team. Well, the U.S. didn't have a national team until 1984. We didn't have a national side. We'd had one decades before because we won the first two Olympics. We were the Olympic champions in Paris and wherever the other was. 1920, 24, we won both Olympic games, the U.S. Anyway, so we were the reigning Olympic champions until it came back as a sevens version in 2016, and we didn't win it. Anyway, so I looked around as a historian, and I saw that England had a long tradition, New Zealand had a long tradition, and South Africa, where I had an interest in Africa, the Springboks had a long tradition of rugby success. And I'm like, So I said, I'm going to be a Springboks fan. So in 1984, I started following the Springboks, which was very difficult because there was no television, no cable, no satellite I could watch it. So I could only read about the games, never watch the games. And I became a Springboks fan. The immediate question was, what are you, racist? What do you mean? What am I racist? Because you're following the Springboks. That's apartheid. They're all racist. Like, no. Anyway, it's a sport. Let go. Anyway, so I became a Springbok fan, and then over the years, just got a deeper and deeper interest into it. When I was in Uganda, I was actually asked to be a coach, one of the coaches for the Ugandan national side. I turned it down because I was busy in Uganda doing peacekeeping training and a bunch of other things, but it would have been cool. It would have been cool to have been a coach for the Ugandan, for the Cranes. That would have been kind of cool. But so anyway, so that's kind of where it grew out of. I've been to every Rugby World Cup since 2011. 2011 in New Zealand, 2014 in Paris for the women, 2015 in England, 17 games I went to. 2017 in Ireland for Belfast for the Women's World Cup again. 2018 in San Francisco for the Sevens, and 2019 in Japan. 6 Rugby World Cups in 8 years. Every one that existed. There you go. For 15s and 7s, that is. Anyway, so what's this? Chris, you're a hillbilly, dueling banjo stuff. Bruce says you met him. He's a sweet oak, massive hands, can drink like a demon. Yeah, I'm sure he's got a lot. He's got a lot put that place. Ruben Kruger is the most underrated Springbok hero ever. Absolute legend. Okay, cool. Martin Van Buren, you Ohio State, went to Penn State, big homecomings. No, Martin. Okay, let me be clear. Okay, so I didn't go to Ohio State. See, Ohio State is a small farming and vo-tech school where we send people for animal husbandry. That's the degrees they get there. How to milk cows, how to plant corn. We send them to Ohio State, that piker, that school that didn't come in existence until 1878, where they have freshman classes of 300 people in a class. I didn't go there. I went to a real institution of higher learning, the oldest institution of higher learning in the old Northwest Territories, the Ohio University, located in Athens, Ohio, named after Athens, Greece, center of education, Socrates and such. So I went to Ohio University. We call it the Harvard on the Hocking. Now it's starting to become an insult because Harvard is a disgrace of a school that it once was, a social justice institution these days. But yeah, we used to call it Harvard on the Hocking because it was almost Ivy League in its reputation. Lots of quality programs. Great history program. Actually, really enjoyed my studies there. Great school. I wish the facilities that they have today in 2020 had been available when I was a student in 1982, 83, 87, 89. It would have been awesome. Nonetheless, it was still awesome, and it was a great experience. I truly, truly loved it. Went to my first concert at Ohio University, which was the Michael Stanley Band. Awesome concert. Stood in line for 3 days for those tickets back in that day. Went to Neil Young when I was there. That was pretty cool. Went to a lot of basketball games. We had NCAA tournament games. Went to the tournament. Had a great team under Danny Nee, who was our coach, who later went to Nebraska, and then he went somewhere else. Fantastic coach. Great team. Really, really enjoyed my experience at Ohio University. So much so that I went back there after leaving after the first time. But great school. Really, really enjoyed it. Fantastic. Peter Mulder and Peter Groenewold. Peter Mulder, that's another one, okay? 3 Peters different. Yeah, it's the All Peters party. All Peters party. Any thoughts on Petra, Adam and Eve, 14,000 years ago? So much hidden, even the period we were entering his mask. When you're talking about Petra, you're talking about Petra as in the settlement in the Jordanian desert. Pretty awesome stuff. Really enjoyed it, watching it in Raiders of the Lost Ark. Adam and Eve. Eve, are you spelling that in Afrikaans fashion there? That's you in English. You as in a female sheep. Yeah, I really do a lot in genealogy. That's a big thing for me. I'm a family historian. I have over 26,000 people in my family history tree, ladies and gentlemen, in case you're curious about that. I don't know if you are or not, but let me try to pull that up. I'll pull up my tree real quick and show you guys something here, if you'd like. This is my page. Let me see if I can get it there real quick. If anyone's interested in this, come on. Where's the browser? There we go. All right, so there's my Ancestry page, and this is my, no, I'm not going to show you the home person, but 26,258 people in my tree right there. There you go. Cool stuff, huh? Yep, I have traced my family history back to the year 550-something in Sweden. That's right, ladies and gentlemen, 550. Isn't that something? Quite a ways back. quite a ways back. Anyway, so of overwhelming Scandinavian, Celtic, Viking descent, Anglo-Saxon, all that stuff. Uncle Joe was still legend when I went to Penn State. Yeah, Joe Paterno, yeah. Athens, Ohio is the home of Rem. Yeah, that's true, Morton. Thanks. Yep. Why he had no idea it was okay to buff the... Andre Joubert is the reason I support the Sharks. Okay, cool. George Floyd, alive and well, living twin basketball player. Teresa's just having fun there. There you go. All right, folks. Explains the beard. What explains the beard? Gina. Okay, up your creek. George Floyd. Okay. What explains the beard? That I went to Ohio University? I haven't had the beard, ladies and gentlemen. I brought this up earlier. Was it this in this stream or was it the earlier stream? Here you go. Beard is out of character for me. It's not something I normally have. Where is this thing at? Here you go. This is me in 1986, 87, early 87, in the Army. Beard is not something I've normally had. Of course, serving 36 and a half years in the Army, you can't have facial hair. You can grow a mustache, but it can't look like this. It's got to be much shorter than that. Oh, the beard and Viking blood. Okay, thanks, Martin. Cool. Gotcha. Now it makes sense. Okay. Yeah. No, the beard is just, it's a lockdown thing, guys. It's a lockdown thing. I grew it for a reason. I grew it originally to subvert expectations so that people, I was part of a debate that was being conducted by the Center for Strategy, CSIS. I was supposed to go to Minneapolis for this debate. This would have been before George Floyd back in April, and it was postponed because of COVID, and then they did it online. And I grew the beard because I was going to go there, and they weren't going to introduce our biographies and just say, these are the people pro for this issue, these are the people against and against this issue, con. We were talking about human rights and counterterrorism, and so I was put on the con, even though I disagree with some of the con stuff. And so I was going to look like some college professor with the beard and the Birkenstocks and the Volvo, so they think I was a leftist. And then I was just going to explain the centrist positions and then see if they listened to me. And then they all would be revealed at the end when they found out that, this guy's a retired colonel who did counterterrorism and taught human rights for the last 30 years. So that was the purpose of the beard. But once I started growing it, I think the first time I was on Ronaldo hose, he's like, hey, man, look at that beard. Because Ronaldo had kind of a little scrubby one at the time. He's like, wow, that's a beard. And that was a few months back. And so then I was on Ronaldo a second time, and people were like, hey, should the colonel keep the beard or shave the beard? And it was about 50-50. Then I went on my stream, and it came up in the topic, and people were like 3-1, keep the beard, keep the beard, keep the beard. So I'll shave it off eventually, but it's on for now. One of the reasons it's on now is because I'm not outside all that often. I'm usually outside in the evenings because it's summertime. It's usually hot, and I'm thinking a beard in the summer, want to be sweating. Hasn't really been a problem because most of the time I'm out, it's early morning or evening because of lockdown, not really going out the rest of the day, so I'm around aircon. But if it was a normal summer and I was out at baseball games and hiking and running all the time, it'd probably be full of the beard by now. I probably would have shaved it off. But anyway, there you go. What about Viking blood? All my ancestors are from Frisia and Denmark and Sweden. And so they were all Vikings. So they used to sail. So William the Conqueror, or William the Bastard, depending on your outlook, was my 34th great-grandfather on my paternal side, as was Harold Godwinson, the guy he defeated at the Battle of Hastings in 1066. They were both my ancestors. Godwinson was a direct descendant of Vikings, Anglo-Saxon king. And William the Bastard was a descendant of Vikings. He was a Norman. The Normans were overwhelmingly, by DNA, actually Scandinavian and Frisian. The reason they were there is that they kept sailing up the Seine to Paris, sacking Paris, stealing gold, attacking monasteries, and burning parts of Paris. And the king said, enough. I think it was Charles the Simple or somebody like that. I can't remember, but anyway, he said, enough. Tell you what, you quit raiding Paris, and I'll give you all this land over here, and you can live there, and it's yours to govern. So they gave them the part of the country that became known as Normandy, which was the land of the Northmen, the Vikings. And so the Normans, the Vikings settled in Normandy, and they were surrounded by French speakers. And over the course of just 100 years, they went from being Nordic language speaking to being French speakers, Roman Catholics, and culturally wise and ethno-linguistically wise, they became French, essentially Normans. But they were by blood almost entirely Scandinavian. They would send for their wives back to where they came from. They bring them, they'd have kids. The next generation would bring wives again. They do that sort of thing. There were some that married locally, but most of them were not married with the Celts who were living there or the French. They were married with Scandinavians. So when they invaded England in 1066, the Norman army, all the knights and nobles and such, were predominantly Scandinavian by blood and DNA. They were French-speaking Roman Catholics, and they were in a French system of governance, but they were ethnically, DNA-wise, Scandinavian overwhelmingly. And so when they settled in England and got large estates, they brought another infusion of Scandinavian blood that had already arrived with the Dane law and the Danes coming and Norwegians coming. Remember that York was Jorvik. Jorvik was a Viking city. It was the largest Viking city in England. And so the whole East Anglia is where the Angles came from. Denmark and northern Germany came over, and they were Vikings. So huge impact from Anglo-Saxons coming there, from Germany and from Denmark, and then also Vikings. So there you go. That's all where it comes from. So my ancestor was Admiral Adam Wyatt, and he came over with William the Conqueror in 1066 and ferried part of his troops across the Channel so that they met at the Battle of Hastings. As a consequence of his participation in the campaign, he was awarded an estate in Kent in southeastern England, below London, southeast of London, on the way to the shore. Anyway, so he had an estate there, and the Wyatts were there for centuries. In fact, that became quite famous and influential. You had a later Adam Wyatt, who was a noted English poet and writer. You had Sir Thomas Wyatt, who led a rebellion against the crown and took an army that he raised in southeast England of 5,000 troops, marched against the crown. And as they got close to London, a lot of people had second thoughts. They're like, I don't want to be part of this. And his army began to melt away as people defected and fled from the army. They went AWOL. Anyway, so by the time he got to London, his force was much smaller than the original 5,000, and they lost the battle to the crown. He was captured and imprisoned in the Tower of London, and at the age of 34, Sir Thomas Wyatt was beheaded in the Tower of London. Now, that could have been the end of the story, but Sir Thomas Wyatt had a son before he died, and his son continued the lineage. Without that son, there would be no Wyatts today, because that would have been the end of the surname on this line. Anyway, so later on, when the Jamestown Colony of Virginia was founded, the first couple governors of the Jamestown Colony of Virginia were company governors. They worked for the Jamestown Company, which was a company given a charter by the king so they could develop economy there and then export tobacco and such. But Jamestown was run by a private enterprise initially. It wasn't government run. It was only later in the 1620s when the king said, enough, I'm hot full of this piss-poor management of this colony. We need a serious presence there. He sent his first royal governor with a royal charter, seal, actual government official to Jamestown, and that was Sir Francis Wyatt, my 17th great uncle. And he arrived, and he's not the progenitor of the Wyatt line in North America, but his brother, the Reverend Hout Wyatt, who came along with him. He is the first of the Wyatts in America from which I descend. So the Reverend Hout Wyatt had sons, and his grandson was Conquest Wyatt, was the first Wyatt born, raised, and died in North America. Conquest Wyatt. So we've been here since about 1621, 1623, something like that, and the Wyatts in North America. So approaching 4 centuries at this point, right around the corner, next year or a couple years down the road, and I'm going to celebrate that. It's going to be a big deal. So that's my Wyatt side, goes back quite a ways. I left the part out when one of my ancestors named Wyatt slept with Anne Boleyn. Remember Anne Boleyn? She became Henry VIII's wife. So the Wyatts have had a history of conflicting with the crown. I'll just leave it at that. So anyways, that's a little bit of that history. Now, despite all that, I lived in abject poverty with no toilet, no running water, no plumbing, no electricity for part of my childhood. So people can piss it all down the drain. Have I ever watched The Vikings on Netflix? Yes, I watched The Vikings. Is that the one, the good one or the comical one? One of them is a comedy. It's supposed to be hilarious. Wyatt is a first name. It's a Christian name given to people, and it's also a surname. In my case, it's surname. No relation to Wyatt Earp. His surname is Earp. At least none that I know. Morton's been to near the Battle of Hastings for a look. Cool. Yeah, I thought Rem was originally from Athens, Georgia, too, Sean. A lot of bands are from Athens, Georgia. So, yeah, Rem is a good group. That is calling. Yeah, it's about time, folks. You know my heritage. Can be but Last Sun. Vikings was a great show. Going to start watching Britannia. I watched Britannia, but I had a hard time keeping with it. I'm going to try to rewatch it again. I would not be in South Africa if my great-great-great-grandfather did not steal chicken in Holland. Well, there you go. There you go. Monkey pushing wood, but that chicken was good, though, huh? Yeah, well, not a good thief got caught and got shipped to South Africa, huh? Anyway, that's interesting. Yeah, you gotta love it, folks. So it's been an interesting day here on the channel. Thank you all so much. Let me just take a quick gander and see what's going on because it's late in South Africa now. We're well past midnight. Gosh, what time is it now? It must be 20 after. So I'll stop here at about 12:30 for you guys. So yeah, it's almost 12:30 in South Africa. So the people joining the channel's tailed off. We got 5,214. That's kind of cool. 5,214 subscribers to Chris White Africa. Thank you so much. It's been a really fascinating last couple of days and seen some good subscriber growth. We've grown 1,000 subscribers just in the last 3 or 4 days, I think it is. So thank you so much for that. But let me just check on the status of those videos. The one especially that I'm really kind of happy about, the Hotful. That one now has, come on. Ooh, it's okay. It's slowing down because people are going to bed. So we dropped off to 300 last hour. So yeah, people are bed. But it's 19,613 views, 1,900 hours. Thank you so much for that. Plus, I think 113 subscribers joined, and we've got 1,606 likes. I have to say, I think that's the most likes I've ever gotten in a video. Thank you so much. I have to double check and make sure. I could be wrong. My video that had 35,000 might have had more likes, but let me just go check on that just to be sure. Things are getting scary in South Africa. That's a couple pages back on here. I just want to make sure before I say that that's, yeah, okay. No, it's not. The one that had 35,000 views had 1,786 likes. So this one with 15,000 less views is just 100 likes short. So hopefully people like it and it'll become the most liked video I've ever had. My SCOM video, which is from yesterday, has got 1,200 views. Well, thank you guys for that too. That's really awesome. Really, really cool. I appreciate it. It's neat stuff when people check out your stuff. Cool. And that's still doing okay. So thank you so much for that, guys. I really appreciate it. Anyway, so tomorrow on the channel, a little bit weirder here. Let me explain. What's this? Karen has said, I've just begun with my ancestry tracing a week ago exactly. I'm at my first ancestor, my father's side. Karen, bit of advice. If you have the opportunity, I don't know your age, but if you have the opportunity to talk to your grandparents, talk to your grandparents. Get as much oral history as you can. Write things down, record it. If they'll let you record it, take photographs, ask to look at their photo albums. Get it all if your grandparents are still alive. Do it. If they're not alive, then see if you can find it from relatives. That's critical. It's important to get that stuff. I was unable to talk to any of my grandparents before I seriously got into, and I had to go back and rediscover these things the hard way. Yep. White Rabbit, The Lie by Sir Walter Rabbit. Okay. 1,769 respectfully signed, keen and working on that. All lines lead to Holland. Yeah, I'm not surprised, Karen. I would expect your lines lead to Holland. Yep. And I have lines in Holland too. So if you know where Middelburg is, and actually I mentioned that to someone the other day, so let me show you where Middelburg is. That's not what I want. I'll do that before I get off here. So Google, come on. That's not what I want. Maps at Google. Yeah, so Middelburg is in the southern part of the Netherlands, and I have ancestors from there. Sorry about that, Karen. But that doesn't mean you can't get there. You can still get there and accomplish that. I'm sorry to hear about your dad passing, your mom's dementia. That's unfortunate. But you can still pull it off. There's ways to do it. And it's a little more hard. It's harder if you don't have that oral history to go and rely on. So come on, my map is loading slowly. Here we go. I'm trying to get to the Netherlands so I can zoom in on that. There we go. And I'm trying to get there so I can bring this up for you guys. Okay, there we go. Okay, so what I'm going to do is put the Netherlands up on the screen very quickly here before I run off. Did we lose people? Oh, we still got viewers here. Okay, so let me get over here, and I'm going to bring this up on the screen for you guys. Let me take myself off the screen, and there's the browser. Okay, so here's Europe. And if you see my mouse swimming out there in the North Sea, right down here, see this island down here? That's in the Netherlands, the very bottom of the Netherlands. That's Middelburg right there. And I have ancestors from there. That was a Hanseatic League city, part of the trading alliance, the medieval trading alliance of ports that were part of this trading, primarily in the Baltic and the North Sea, but mostly in the Baltic. And so Middelburg was a Hanseatic city. I have ancestors from there, and I also have ancestors from up here. There's a little island called Ameland up here in the northern part of the Netherlands. So I have ancestors from there. The people in Middelburg right here, the Hanseatic traders, one of them had gone to Kalmar. Kalmar is in Sweden. So let me show you this. Okay, so let me, as part of the Hanseatic League, Come on, this page is taking too long. There we go. So on the east coast of Sweden, you see this here where my mouse is going up and down? That is Öland. It's 60 kilometers long roughly, or maybe it's a little bit longer than that. There's a very narrow island. And let me show you if I can get the map to come up a little bit. Just take a second. Okay, so right here is Kalmar, right? Okay. Kalmar was also a Hanseatic League. It's a medieval city. It's gorgeous. I've been there. Lovely place. Now, I visited there, and I didn't know my family history, but when I got this, you can go south, which is shorter, or you can go north. And I said, let me go north. So I traveled, and I went up to Boda, right here, in the very north of the island, where my mouse is at, right there. Boda. And then I came back down the other side, and I came across here. So I didn't see the southern part, but that's just by happenstance. So Boda, it turns out, is where my ancestors, because the guy from Middelburg in the Netherlands came here, married a Swedish girl, and her family came from Boda. So my history is documented back to the year about 534 on that island. Now, I didn't do that research because I'm tied to a famous line of people who settled New Amsterdam. And that line, the Wyckoff family, which is a made-up surname, because English forced the Dutch to stop using patronyms. So my ancestor created Wyckoff as a name. His family came from Middelburg, so there's how you got it. So you got some ancestors on the mother's side from the Netherlands. Cool. My grandsister's turning 103 4 months. She used to tell so many stories. Tunes, oh my gosh. You should talk to her if she's still lucid and hear what she's got to say, record whatever she's got to say. She's 103. She's probably got some cool stories about life. You got to do it, man. Check it out. Use the phone, use Skype, whatever. Use WhatsApp. Talk to them. That's also good for folks to feel people care and are interested in their life. Sharon Stone says, I'm a Celt with Viking blood from Irish ancestors, dark hair, blue eyes. My sister's the only throwback with blonde hair and blue eyes. Yeah, absolutely, Sharon. That's right. The Vikings also landed in Ireland and many other places, and they had a big influence in parts, small geophysical areas, but they had a big influence on Dublin and other parts of Ireland as well. Plus, Iceland. They thought for decades that Iceland was overwhelmingly Scandinavian because who else settled there? Just the Vikings. Except they did the DNA, and the matrilineal DNA proves that a significant portion of the women who became the women who had kids in Iceland were actually from Ireland. The Vikings took slaves and or purchased wives or took women who went with them willingly from Ireland repeatedly over decades. They were the wives of the Vikings who settled Iceland. And so that changed the whole narrative on Iceland's origins. They thought it was entirely Scandinavian. The men were Scandinavian, overwhelmingly. But the women had a major influence, predominant influence, actually from Irish women. So there you go. Ireland has even settled Iceland, and people don't know about that. Anyway, so there you go. I was 4 when my last grandparent passed and got so much in trouble as a kid getting on my dad's nerves, asking questions. Oh, sorry, Lazon. That's sad. I actually knew most of my grandparents, but not all of them. Gina says, my 12th great-grandfather arrived in South Africa in 1657 from Holland. Wow. There you go. Just 5 years after the Cape Colony was settled by the evil, terrible Jan van Riebeck. Have you ever tried to Skype with a 103-year-old? Still working on WhatsApp with 70-years. Okay, fair enough, Tian. I so regret not recording my grand's memories. She had many. When you're young, you do not think how valuable. Exactly, Karen. That is correct. In my case, you're trying to build your life. You're trying to experience the things. You're trying to get out there. And so I never had that chance. Also, I wasn't around my grandparents because we were physically separated from them, so it was very difficult to do. My grandmother, by the time she came and lived with us in Ohio, I was leaving for university the next year, and she was not all there. She was having Alzheimer's already, so it was difficult to get anything from her. But yeah. Sharon says the whole spectrum: Celt, French Huguenots, Dutch, Italian, Viking. I have no Italian in me, no Italian whatsoever. Family motto, coat arms, Landry à bon cœur. Priestly warriors. Cool. Martin says, why do so many Americans call themselves like Irish Americans and so on if they've been USA for generations? Not many do. Some do, but not many do. Italian Americans and Irish, those are identities that really stuck, and they're really tied to surnames and where people grew up in neighborhoods. I know I don't call myself an Irish American, but I have Irish ancestry. I don't call myself a German American. I'm just an American. But all my ancestors have been here. The latest was 1848, so they all came by 1848. Unfortunately, hence my ejection from World Heritage Site. Ooh, okay. That will make me South African, American, Chinese. My grandparents were Miller, Mundish, Bota, Blingout, English, French, and Yugoslavian. That's Yugoslavian? Oh, the Mundish. Maybe that's Yugoslavian. Interesting. Cool. All right. Yeah, so there you go, ladies and gentlemen. Ancestry is kind of cool. Family history is neat. And a lot of people are like, oh, are you related to kings and queens? Yeah, but if you're white, Anglo-Saxon, Protestant, the odds are pretty good you're related to a king and queen. Real kings and queens. That's interesting, and I find that interesting, but that doesn't define who I am, and it doesn't change my worldview or anything, or it doesn't also make me feel any kind of guilt for anything. I shouldn't. But it is interesting to learn about ancestors who had fascinating stories. So, for instance, my great-great-grandfather, William Bear Grimes, enlisted in the Maryland 7th Infantry Regiment with his brother in 1862, served for 3 years in combat in 30 major battles, including Antietam, I think Cold Harbor, the Wilderness. And in one of the battles, he was marching along in formation with all of the troops, shoulder to shoulder, rifles over the shoulder as they approached the Confederate lines. The Confederates fired a volley. Crack of rifle fire. The man on his right, the man on his left, shot straight through the center of their head with a bullet. Dropped right there. The formation continued to march. They defeated the Confederates, but for inches. But for inches, ladies and gentlemen, would not be here. Would not be here today. Would not exist. Think about that. That'll boggle your mind. That'll make you crazy. Think about that. Would not exist if it were not for the good fortune that they put him in formation in that spot and not the one to the left, not the one to the right. Wow. Think about that. You want to talk about luck and good fortune? There you go. And that's what's kind of cool about studying ancestry. Kind of cool. Karen says, I only have a few weeks experience at this. Can I reach out to you if you get stuck? Yeah, Karen, send me an email. Go to the About tab. Look on there, and I'll help you out if I can. I'll be happy to share with you. I do coach a lot of people when it comes to genealogy. Absolutely be willing to help. I'm not an expert on documents in South Africa because I didn't research how the government kept their records. Church records and Bibles are usually good sources, but when it comes to civil records, I don't know the story in South Africa. I know it in Germany and other places, but not so well in South Africa. Because I have no ancestors from South Africa. Oh, interestingly enough, even though I have no South African ancestors, there is a street named after me. Not after me. After Lieutenant Wyatt, who served in the British forces in the Anglo-Zulu War of 1879. And my namesake there has a street in Durban called Wyatt Street or Wyatt Straat. It's a very small street, about 100, 200 meters long. It's where the British, there's a museum there to the war, and it's on that street. It was named after him. Yep. Well, if you're Anglo-Saxon, you probably got some Viking blood in you. That is correct. Yep. So let me get back to where I was at here. Get the right program open. Cool beans. All right. Well, I hope you guys enjoyed this stream. It's a lot longer than I expected to go tonight. Teresa Smuts says Vikings picks Celts RH -A B-. Anu of Japan. Wow, that's unusual. Caucasian, Asian from Caucasus to Switzerland, Slavs. These are the peoples who make up England. Oh, you're talking about, yeah, okay. Yeah, I thought the Anu of Japan? That seems odd. Seems we all have Viking blood. Martin says, my mother-in-law swam from China to Hong Kong. When she passed away, did not have birth certificates. They traced her medical record. She was 105. Wow, that's impressive. Documentation of Cape Town Archives is treasured and well preserved. Yeah, that I would believe, Gene, and that would go back to 1652, and I would suspect, absolutely. Yeah, so, yeah, no, a lot of Afrikaners find tracing their ancestry not that difficult. It's easy to do in many respects because a lot of that's been documented ever since folks arrived and that community began to form. It's the Netherlands side and further back than I need to continue with. Oh, okay, Karen. Yeah, the Netherlands. Yeah, interesting. Well, we can chat. How can it be accessed? There's lots of ways. Some of the things. Oh, you live in Durban, Erica. Cool. Check it out. Let me see if I can find it real quick. If it'll show up. WYAT. They might have renamed it, to something like. Who knows? There's Wyatt Street. There's one in Maidstone, Stoke. Wyatt Road, Stamford Hill, Durban, South Africa. I don't know if that's the same one. Let me see if it shows up to be the same. Where's it at? Wyatt Road. There it is. Yeah, that's the one. It's Wyatt Road, not Wyatt Street. Wyatt Road, Stamford Hill, Durban. There's a McDonald's right down the street. That's the one. Yeah, you've got the... there you go, Wyatt Road. Yep, that's it. Where's that British Museum? Is it gone? I don't see it on the map here. It's a short road. It's between K. Masinga Road and Bram Fisher Road. Yep. There says a Kwa Mule Museum of Durban's History and People. Maybe they've turned that British Museum into that. But yeah, Wyatt Road. It's very small. I'll show it to you guys real quick here. Let me bring it up before we go off. Yep, there's a Wyatt Road there. Named after a British officer from the Anglo-Zulu War. There you go. So right here, you got the little red dot in the center. There's a picture of it, Wyatt Road. It just runs between there, a short distance. I'll zoom out so you can see if you know Durban. I've been to the McDonald's right there on Old Fort Road. Kingsmead Stadium. There you go. Not too far from the Gray Street Complex. You see it right there in Durban. That's where the Wyatt Road is. Anyway, they haven't renamed that one yet. Yay, cool. Oh, Erica will send me photos. Thank you, Erica. I've got some, but some more current ones would be great. Appreciate it. I have a picture of me standing under the sign that says Wyatt Road on it. I'll find that somewhere, and I'll share that with you guys. Yeah, cool beans. All right, so I'm almost at 3 hours. I'm going to call it at 3 hours, folks. So let me just say thank you all so much. This has been a really fascinating and fun day. I'm kind of tired now. I'm going to take a break, get something to eat, and then call it a night. Probably watch some of the Major Crimes, which is the spinoff of The Closer with Kira Sedgwick. This one's with Mary McDowell. I really enjoy that. There's a Morton Road in my town. My great-great-grandfather. That's awesome, Morton. Cool. Anyway, thank you all so much for tuning in. Really appreciate it. God bless and have a good night. I'll see you guys tomorrow. That's what I want to say. Sorry, tomorrow for the stream, my usual show is 11 o'clock on Saturdays. It won't be until 2 o'clock. So that's 8 o'clock in South Africa, which is when Ronaldo's on. Sorry, but that's when my guest is available. He's in the UK, and it's David Otto, a security specialist. We're going to talk about national security and counterinsurgency in Africa tomorrow at 2 p.m., 8 p.m. in Botswana and South Africa. That's up on the channel. That's unusual. I don't know if I'll do a stream before that, and I may do a stream after that. We'll see. But anyway, tomorrow it's at 2 o'clock, which is an unusual time, 2 o'clock, 8 p.m. on that side, because that's when my guest was available. I will have my Saturday stream. So anyway, if there'll be more, I'll let you guys know, and we'll get it up. Oh, Lezan loves Major Crime. Yeah, I'm in season, season 3 now. Yeah, season 3. Wait, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Or no, I'm season 4. May have started season 4. It's an awesome show. I bought all the DVDs for like $10 a season, and I had a couple already. I just bought the rest of them because I'm enjoying it. But anyway, so I'll let you know how it goes. But I'm enjoying that. So you guys take care. God bless and have a good evening. And I will catch you guys tomorrow.